On the peaceful continent of Earthland, a legend had all but vanished from the annals of history. The story of the elemental nations and the Shinobi, like many other stories told to children at night, had faded into the back of very few people's memories. Nobody would be aware that everything in the stories had truly occurred. It would only exist as a telltale that parents could enjoy doing with their kids. It was astonishing that stories about the cursed Shinobi would still be told after nearly 5,000 years had passed. However, remnants of the ancient civilization can still be seen at several landmarks throughout Earthland. These are the scars left by the numerous devastating battles that have occurred in the past. Despite the violent nature of the Shinobi and their history of war, a ray of hope saved the world from annihilation at the end of their bitter existence. The existence of this one man stood out more than that of any other Shinobi, even though no one knew the savior's true name anymore. During the Shinobi era, this one man was the hero who put an end to all wars. He was the only one who was able to seal the monstrous source of all power within himself and bring about world peace. Even though the Shinobi and the one hero legend had all but vanished, it was evident that it was thanks to the hero that Earthland had the opportunity to exist at Euro. Everyone alive today owed that one man their lives. This is why the story of the one hero has been passed down from parent to child for so long. However, there is still more to be done. The hero's journey is not finished. A woman strolled down a busy street in a big town in the serene land of Fury. Among the many others, she was a sight to behold because of her shapely figure and flowing scarlet hair. She was a young woman. She was walking idly through the crowds, her brown eyes gazing straight ahead as if she were just another civilian. However, it was clear that she was abnormal. It appeared as though the young lady was not even trying to hold the enormous horn over her head with one hand. The attractive woman didn't even display the slightest discomfort, but both men and women shied away from her as if she were a monster. This was Erza Scarlet, a member of Fairy Tail, one of the most notorious guilds in Earthland and one of the strongest sorcerers to ever set foot in Fury. Because of Erza's immense power, her name had nearly become a legend, and Titania was a well-known moniker throughout the lands. Erza looked up at the lowering sun and muttered to herself, I should rest up for the night. For the past few days, the weather around Fury seemed to shift constantly, so Erza was relieved that it was back to normal. There was a monsoon-like rainstorm 3 days ago, a powerful thunderstorm 2 days ago that nearly covered the whole Fury region, and yesterday the sun seemed to have gotten bigger and transformed the entire country into a searing mass of heat. The numerous towns in Fury were in disarray following the several days of severe weather. Due to the intense heat from the previous day, a dense fog covered a vast area, and the streets were flooded and covered in the rubble of fallen buildings. The weather had not returned to normal until today. The weather inconsistency was unlike anything Erza had ever encountered, and she had no idea how it could have happened. When she returned to Fairy Tail, she had planned to question her guild master about the strange happenings. The S-class mage approached the counter of a nearby inn after entering. The young woman said in a businesslike manner, "Hello, I would like one room for the night, please." Despite being a rather old building, the inn had a nostalgic feel to it and was quite pleasant. Additionally, there was a small tavern in the lobby where locals would gather for dinner and drinks with friends. Before going to bed, Erza mentally noted that she should have a nice dinner later. The receptionist smiled and nodded. The woman took Erza's money and gave her a room key, to which Erza replied, "Of course, miss." Erza heard a table discussing the strangest things that had happened recently as she was ready to ascend the stairs to her room. A bottle of beer was being held by each of the men as they conversed with one another. One man took a big swig from his bottle and said, "Yeah, I heard that things are really bad out in the countryside." An additional elderly man gave his friend's words a nod. With some hiccups, the man muttered, "I heard that too." Apparently the countryside was the place where the weather was the most severe. Some mages in the area are saying that that area is the focal point of whatever is causing the weather to change. Additionally, a woman who seemed to be one of the men's girlfriends nodded her head in agreement. Well, that would make sense. Such crazy weather must be some sort of spell casted by a very strong mage for something. A waiter laughed as he approached the table. As he set down additional beer bottles for the group, the man remarked, "That's what a lot of people are saying, but that craziest thing is that a gigantic monolith suddenly sprung up from the ground. They say that it might be some sort of ancient ruin. People around the area are told to stay away from it for the while just in case that it is dangerous." After hearing what the group had to say, Erza closed her eyes and left the inn, seeing that she could not simply ignore it. She knew that the countryside was only a short distance from the town, so she should have no trouble getting there. Erza hurriedly plugged herself into the SE plug and rented a magical car from a nearby establishment. Erza sensed that something was off about the monolith, and since it could have such a significant impact on the weather, it must be something strong. Erza put a lot of her own energy into the car and drove as quickly as she could out of the city. The young lady hasn't felt this urgent in a long time, but for some reason, Erza was fascinated by the bizarre things that had happened in the last few days. After an hour or so of driving, Erza finally noticed a group of people encircling a location. Only when she approached the area did she notice a huge hole in the ground. When one looked down, it appeared to go on forever and was most likely more than 300 feet in diameter. The massive monolith that occupied the majority of the hole with its enormous dimensions was the only object that rose to prominence. Erza had never experienced anything like the enigmatic aura emanating from the massive monolith, which was entirely black. She noticed that the majority of the people in the crowd were from different guilds of fury as she exited her car and began to move towards them. Unaware that one of the strongest mages in fury had recently joined their ranks, the groups were all chatting among themselves about the odd occurrence. She could feel the enormous aura of power radiating off the monolith in waves the closer she got. Erza glanced around and noticed that the surrounding area was significantly more damaged than the towns. This was unexpected because the towns were primarily damaged due to their tall buildings, but the countryside was nearly entirely flat, so the lightning shouldn't have caused as much damage there. Nearly all of the trees in the area had burned to the ground, and lightning strikes had created numerous deep trenches. Some higher ground had started to crack from dryness due to the high heat just a day ago, but the soil surrounding them was still very wet from the intense rainstorm a few days prior. The region appeared terrible overall, and it appeared that the weather had been particularly severe there. How did it cause such drastic weather changes, and what the devil is this thing? Erza crossed her arms and thought to herself, this aura feels really strong, but it's unlike anything I've ever experienced before, Erza said as she moved closer to the hole until she was almost at the edge. All of a sudden, there was strong turbulence on the ground, making it hard to stand. The foundation of the entire landmass was trembling, and cracks were starting to appear along the ground, shocking the many mages in the area. Erza's eyes grew wide as the earth started to split into enormous cracks, forcing her to jump back. Some of the local mages fell into the hole, but everyone else was using their magic to run to the closest safe place. A man with panic in his eyes landed a few meters behind Erza. What the hell is going on? The man exclaimed, still staggering back in disbelief. Erza was astonished to discover that the monolith was moving while she was staring at it. The woman yelled, "Get out of the area, that thing is moving," as those in her immediate vicinity nodded and flinched away. Erza was going to heed her own counsel, but she felt compelled to investigate the true cause of the odd occurrences in the monolith. The ground appeared to be about to collapse as the monolith began to move more quickly and the cracks around it grew wider. Erza chanted her magical power throughout her body and glared at the enormous object. The young woman exclaimed, "Kareha no Yoroi," while wearing black armor with silver trim and silver crosses scattered throughout. It featured plates that extended down to her waistguard on either side of her hips and a revealing breastplate with a silver edge. Erza's front was bared by the waistguard, and a dark imbuement concealed her groin. Her legs were protected by big plates. Her two wings were supported by black metal arms that served as the wing's main structural support, but the parts that allowed her to fly were made of a substance that resembled membrane. The young woman spread her wings and leapt up in her armor. The Titania flew up towards the big object, and the other mages beneath her watched in disbelief. With a huge blade in her hands, Erza charged at the top of the monolith. Erza was able to hover above the monolith with ease because it was still moving slowly, and she seized the opportunity to land on top of it. To Erza's surprise, however, a peculiar pattern resembling an old letter appeared on the surface as soon as she touched down on the monolith. "What now?" exclaimed Erza, surveying the surroundings. As it moved in an eerie circle around Erza, the letters began to glow a vivid blue, and soon a portion of the circle clung to her leg. In an attempt to free herself, Erza slashed her blade down at the stream of letters, but to her surprise, it simply faded through it as though it were intangible. Erza was unaware of what was happening. She could feel the letters clinging to her, but they were completely unaffected by her attacks. Erza's arms were soon firmly locked against her torso as more of the letters grabbed hold of her body. Erza struggled to free herself with her blade, but she was immobile. "Damn it," the young woman swore, gasping for air. Erza's eyes widened even more when she noticed that the monolith's top was opening up and that the same blue light was emanating from inside. Erza was drawn into the monolith by the letters that imprisoned her without any effort, and as soon as she was inside, the aperture shut. Mages watched in disbelief as Erza was drawn into the strange object, but they were powerless to assist because Erza had already been taken prisoner. It would only take a few more minutes for the monolith to be completely freed from its underground confines as it kept rising out of the earth. Where am I? Erza opened her eyes and thought to herself. The strong woman was floating in a suspension of some kind of plasma, much to her surprise. She could hear as if she were in open air and breathe as if she was on land, even though it felt like she was submerged in water. The same blue light from earlier was shining on all sides of the transparent suspension, giving it a blue appearance. The space was so enormous that Erza was unable to see the far end. Erza used her wings to swim closer to one direction while searching for any exit, realizing she was still wearing one of her battle armors. Then all of a sudden, she heard something. Erza turned to face the opposite side of the room, where the noise was coming from. Erza was certain it was the sound of a baby's cries. Erza swam in that direction after hearing the baby's sound, and as she approached the nearest wall's edge, she noticed a tiny gap. It had a rectangular shape and was just big enough for Erza to pass through. Erza reached her arm towards the opening when she was sufficiently close, but she discovered that it was open air and devoid of any suspension. Erza walked into the gap and got to her feet, grinning to herself. She was surprised to find that the opening resembled the beginning of a long hallway and that none of the suspension was adhered to her clothing. Erza could clearly hear the baby's cries coming from the other end of the hallway, but they were much louder now. Erza muttered to herself as she sprinted down the hallway at her fastest pace, "This is just crazy." The hallway's walls were glowing and featured the same strange letters as before, but thankfully they were stationary. Erza recalled the waiter from the inn who had mentioned that the monolith was being described as ancient ruins. Since the letters on the wall appeared to be some sort of ancient language, Erza was certain that the monolith was ancient even though it was not in ruins. Erza took a few more seconds to reach the opening before she finally noticed the light at the end of the hallway. Erza was astounded once more to discover that the corridor opened into an enormous, open space the size of several large stadiums. All of the letters were glowing a vivid blue, and they were the same mysterious letters that had been on the large room's wall. The room was supported by 10 enormous crystal pillars, all of which were pulsing with power. A glowing white box the size of a house stood in the middle of the spacious room, and Erza sensed that something very significant was inside. The woman leapt to the ground and hovered over to the glowing box with her wings. As she landed outside of the box, Erza smirked and muttered, "Weird and sudden this all may be. But damn thing are so cool here." Erza circled the box once and noticed that it had no entrance. She stood outside of it, her eyes narrowed. Erza slowly extended her hand to touch one side of the box, and to her astonishment, it passed right through. Although the entire box was opaque, it was only a membrane that prevented people from seeing. Erza exhaled as she entered the box and passed through the bright white wall. Erza did not anticipate a baby floating in the center of the box, but she did anticipate some kind of artifact on the other side. A baby was clearly the source of the earlier cries, and it continued to cry aloud. Erza was unsure of how to respond to such paranormal events. The enormous monolith, which was thought to be thousands of years old, was not supposed to contain a live baby. The woman approached the infant and saw that he was a boy, only a few days old, when she looked down at him. With his tiny hands balled into fists, the infant was wailing loudly. He had a few strands of blonde hair on his head, and his belly was tattooed with an odd design that resembled the letters surrounding the monolith. Erza couldn't resist grinning at the adorable baby. After a moment of hesitation, Erza put her blade down on the ground and encircled the little baby with her arms. She drew him away from the center of the box and to her chest. Erza rocked the boy slowly from side to side while grinning down at him. For the first time, the boy opened his eyes to look at the person holding him after appearing to calm down a bit and stop crying. The boy's large, round, azure blue eyes made Erza smile even more. They were stunning. Erza said, "You are a cute little one, aren't you?" with her typically calm demeanor. For the red-haired woman, the infant started to giggle and wave his tiny hands in the air. The baby roared, "Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba," and clapped his hands together. Erza wiggled her nose against the baby's stomach and laughed. The boy began to laugh and Erza heard a wonderful melody as he said, "Boo-ba-boo-boo." Although Erza had no idea what was going on, she began to laugh with the boy because he made her feel so happy. Erza put a finger to the infant's tiny nose and moved it around. "Who are you, little guy?" the lovely woman blurted out, her lips pursed. "You are not some 5,000 years old baby, are you?" The infant simply kept giggling at Erza and clapping his hands together. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Abruptly, the space started to transform once more. As the box surrounding them disappeared from view and the letters on the room's main walls started to glow brighter, Erza gripped the bay tightly. Erza and the infant were surrounded by 10 pillars that began to rumble and release even more power than before. With the baby in her free arm and her blade in one, Erza gritted her teeth. She was terrified that the place would begin to collapse from within, even though she knew she had to leave. Erza had to close her eyes as the light grew brighter and brighter. To shield the infant's tiny eyes from harm, she put a hand over them, but the infant began to wriggle. Some kind of energy was building up in the center of the large room, and the ground around Erza started to rumble and shake. For some reason, Erza knew she had to protect the baby at all costs, so she stabbed her blade into the ground and held the infant close to her chest. As the light intensified, a high-pitched drone began to reverberate throughout the space. Erza eventually lost the ability to move, the light caused some eye pain, and the noise was nearly intolerable. Erza clung to the infant and hoped the strange things would stop quickly, but they only got stronger. Then all of a sudden, everything came to a halt. The ground ceased to tremble, the light vanished, and the silence returned. Erza opened her eyes slowly, expecting to see the glowing walls once more, but instead she saw something else. She was once again outside in the country, standing at the edge of the enormous hole, much to Erza's constant surprise and frustration. This time, however, the monolith had vanished, leaving the big hole empty. For several seconds, Erza was unable to respond. There was no way to justify everything that had transpired thus far. Erza glanced around and saw that every single mage that had been there had vanished a euro. Not a single soul could be seen. What the hell is going on? Erza was startled out of her reverie by some light wriggling in her arms, and when she looked down, she saw that a pair of azure blue eyes were staring back up at her. Erza was immediately reminded of the baby and promptly attended to him. She checked to see if the intense light or sound had injured him, but he was fine. In spite of everything, he wasn't even crying. Erza gave a small laugh and gently rocked the infant. The woman smiled at the infant and said, "You are a strong little guy, aren't you?" With that, Erza flew back towards town to spend the night, but she was still trying to process everything that had happened thus far. "I guess I'll bring you back to Fairy Tale with me. Maybe the master would know what was that back there." As the day dawned, sunlight streamed through the windows of Erza's inn room. The red-haired woman's hair was all over her pillow as she slept in her normal pajamas. She turned to the side of the room and raised her hand to shield her eyes from the sunlight. Erza was so exhausted when she returned to the inn last night that she fell asleep almost immediately and slept until the next morning. Erza initially believed that everything that had transpired was a crazy dream, but she later saw evidence to the contrary. The infant she discovered a few hours ago was soundly dozing on the bed beside her. The young woman reached over and lightly brushed the baby's cheek, murmuring, "So everything was real, huh?" Erza climbed out of bed and held the infant in her arms. "You sure are a brave baby. You can still sleep so deeply after all that stuff last night." Erza noticed that the baby was significantly heavier than she had remembered. Erza held the young boy within arm's reach and noticed that he had grown a little over the course of the night, appearing to be around a few months old. Erza glanced at the boy, her jaw slightly lowered. "What the hell? How did you grow so much in one night?" Upon awakening, the boy's eyes twitched, and his azure blue eyes once more met Erza's shock brown orbs. As soon as he saw Erza, the boy started to clap his hands together and burst out laughing once more. "Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba." With a sigh, Erza took a seat on the bed. "Oh, I give up. I'll just ask Master what is all this later." The name, Fairy Tale, evokes a spirit of adventure where one can learn more about mysteries and fate. Fairy Tale is the strongest guild in the Kingdom of Fury. One might anticipate that the mages in the guild would be brave and daring given this philosophy, but that wasn't all. The Fairy Tale mages were different from the majority of other mages in other guilds, who would rather have power and prestige. The Fairy Tale mages took great pride in their reputation among the Fiorian populace for causing mayhem and destruction wherever they went. If they cared about their environment, they wouldn't be Fairy Tale. They were all just happy, strange people, but they were definitely powerful. One could say that it was part of Fairy Tale's culture. The Guild of Fairy Tale was engaged in their customary altercation in the center of their base on this fateful day. "Damn you, Gray!" exclaimed a slender, slightly tanned young man of average height with black eyes and spiky pink hair. His attire included a black waistcoat with gold trim that was sleeveless, frequently left open and unbuckled to reveal his bare chest, white knee-length pants, a thick black wristband on his left wrist, black open-toed sandals, and a scarf with a scale design. "Is that all you got, slanted eyes?" The other young man taunted the young man as he hopped from table to table, and Gray jumped to the side to avoid a ball of fire that was thrown at him. "You'll never beat me, Natsu, admit it." Natsu clenched his fists and snarled. The young mage leapt at Gray once more and slammed his literally inflamed fists together, exclaiming, "You wish bastard. then. A blue icy mist enveloped Gray as he pressed his right fist to his left palm. The man said, "Ice make." Hammer. As a huge ice-based hammer materialized in midair and fell on Natsu. Gray was a muscular, toned young man whose lack of clothing made his features more prominently visible. He has black hair, dark blue eyes, and a forehead scar. Natsu shouted, "Karya, no Tekken," as he pounded the hammer with his fists, causing it to shatter into pieces. "Go Natsu!" exclaimed a blue cat whose wings were hovering in midair. The rivals would always act that way, and many other fairy tale mages were amusedly observing the two boys from the sidelines. A slim, attractive young woman was grinning at the scene. The most distinguishing feature of her hairstyle is a short, upward ponytail that was created by gathering and tying the hair that covered her forehead. She had long, white hair that was slightly curled at the ends, with two bangs framing her face and reaching down to her chest. She was dressed in a long, sophisticated red dress that accentuated her amazing figure. The white-haired girl smiled and said, "They never change. Natsu and Gray always fight like this, you don't have to worry Lucy." With brown eyes and shoulder-length blonde hair, Lucy typically wears the majority of her hair loose and ties it up in a small ponytail on the right side of her head with ribbons of various colors. She was a young mage who had chosen to join Fairy Tail after running into Natsu a few days prior. It was a wonder that everything in the bar was still in one piece. She was still getting used to her friend getting into serious arguments with his other friend. Lucy nodded and gave a sheepish little laugh. "Okay. Mirajane-san," the girl muttered as she took a seat on a bar stool. Abruptly, a man with a pale face and a look of extreme fear rushed into the main room. "Hey everybody," the man exclaimed, his face displaying panic. "Erza is back." Everyone in the guild started to stutter in disbelief as soon as he said those words. Everyone who was talking stopped, and Natsu and Gray immediately stopped fighting and started to perspire uncontrollably. Luch glanced back at Mirajane and sat quietly in her seat. With curiosity, the young blonde girl asked, "Who is this Erza, Mirajane-san? I heard Natsu and Happy talk about her before, and they both said that she is really scary." Mirajane shook her head amusedly and giggled. The joyful woman chirped at the newest guild member. "Erza-san is one of the strongest mages in Fairy Tail. She grew up with Natsu and Gray. I guess that are just scared of her, that's all." Lucy gave a nod, but she was beginning to believe in Natsu much more than Mirajane due to the loud, heavy footsteps approaching. Before long, a long shadow extended from the guild's main door, and everyone waited in silence for Erza to enter. Both Natsu and Gray forced a smile on their faces and had their arms around each other's shoulders as though they were very friendly. If this Erza had such an impact on someone as hyper as Natsu, Lucy could only speculate as to what sort of person she was. Soon after, someone entered the building with a huge monster horn, which she casually set on the floor, causing the entire structure to tremble. When Erza's friends saw her face, the majority of them became even more terrified than before. Erza made a vow that punishment would be meted out after her eyes darted around the room, scanning everyone who was staring at her as though she was trying to determine whether anyone was acting inappropriately. Lucy was gazing admiringly at Erza. As the girl gazed at her senpai, she thought, "She's beautiful." Erza grinned at Gray and Natsu. The young woman with the red hair muttered, "It's good to see you too, Natsu, Gray. You both are sure in good terms." Gray rubbed the back of his head and laughed. The young man said somewhat frantically, "Of course we are. We are best friends." Natsu simply nodded while grinning artificially. "I." Erza nodded and grinned before turning to face Mirajane, who was grinning back at her. Erza asked her longtime friend, "Hey Mira, is Master here?" in a courteous manner. Mirajane smiled endlessly and shook her head. "No, Master just went to a guild master meeting yesterday." Erza gave a frustrated grunt, wishing she could ask the master what had happened to her the day before. "Okay." Mirajane also noticed that Erza had a small bundle in her arms, and that it appeared to be moving at that moment. Mirajane asked, "Anyo?" Erza, as Erza turned to face her, after asking, "What is that you are holding?" Everyone turned to face Erza, who was indeed carrying a small bundle. Natsu approached Erza to examine the moving object in her arms more closely. The baby decided to wake up and sit up a little on Erza's arm just as she was about to respond. His tiny head then emerged from the bundle. The red-haired girl sighed, unsure of how her guild mates would react, but she smiled when the baby boy began to giggle up at her and pat her cheek. Erza thought the little boy was adorable and entertaining during the few hours they spent traveling together. This was unusual for someone like her, but it was true. While everyone was silent, Natsu slowly gestured to the infant with his finger. "Erza, When did you become a mom? Erza struck Natsu squarely on the head and abruptly burst a vein in her forehead. He's not my kid, you idiot. The S-class mage said, casting a menacing gaze down at the fallen young man with pink hair. The baby began to whimper a little and was about to cry at Erza's loud voice, but she saw it and immediately began to rock him gently. I found him on my mission and I had to ask the master about him. Sorry, it's okay. I'm only mad at the idiot on the ground. Gray laughed at the ground-based Natsu. Well, that is a strange thing to run into on a job. Are you sure his parents weren't around? Erza gave a serious nod. The young woman sat down with the boy still in her arms and muttered, I am definitely sure. Let me tell you guys the whole story. It's safe to say that the entire guild fell silent after Erza spent the next 30 minutes describing the entire monolith experience and the peculiar weather phenomenon. Since none of the people there had ever heard of anything even close to what Erza had gone through, they could all appreciate Erza's desire to question the master about the boy. While this was going on, Natsu and Gray were both giving the boy intense looks, and the infant was simply giving them an innocent look in return. The boy giggled a little when Natsu gently prodded his cheek. So he's some sort of baby that was trapped in some ancient ruins. And when you found him he was still alive. And he grew a few months overnight? Erza gave a nod. The young woman rocked the baby uncontrollably and said, I brought him back to show him to master because I really don't know what to do with him. With a smile on her face, Mirajane tousled the baby's blonde hair. As everyone stared at her in surprise, the kind woman said, well, maybe he can join Fairy Tale. Mirajane chirped, he is an orphan so to speak, and he is just so cute, while petting the infant's chin. Lucy nodded and giggled at the laughing and wriggling infant. Yeah, he is a very happy baby. Erza glanced around abruptly and grinned upon seeing Levi, a friend. Levi was a young adolescent girl who was shorter than average for her age and had a slim build. She typically wears a colorful bandana around her head to tie up her blue hair, which is cut short on top and longer on the bottom. She was wearing an orange sundress, and when Erza looked at her, she smiled back. Erza placed the infant on the table and said, Hey Levi, come here for a second. With a nod, Levi approached the packed table and took a seat beside Erza. What is it, Erza-chan? When Erza opened the cloth she had wrapped around the infant's body, she revealed to Levi a number of tattooed marks on the infant's arms and torso. On the baby's belly, some letters form 3 circles, and on both of his arms, other letters form 2 circles. Erza turned to face a startled Levi. Do you have any idea what these letters are saying? Levi's eyes had widened as she ran her fingers over the baby's letters, causing the little boy to squirm and giggle. While others were in disbelief, the girl explained, I've never seen such letters before. And anything that is similar to them were from an ancient text that dates back almost 5 millennia ago. Levi put on a pair of glasses and remarked, I might be able to translate parts of it though. Erza grinned. Thanks Levi. For the next few minutes, everyone let Levi work in silence, with the exception of the baby, who was wriggling around adorable Ly as Levi's finger tickled his skin. While working, Levi couldn't help but smile at the cute boy, he was so endearing. Levi had a number of ancient textbooks on the table in front of her, and she had already attempted to match the wording with nearly 10 different old texts, but she had been unsuccessful. She was aware that she was unable to translate anything on the infant's arms or torso, but she was able to read one thing. Levi glanced up at Erza and dabbed at her perspiration. I'm sorry Erza-chan. I can't translate anything that really matters on his body but I can read one thing that is on his right arm. Erza gave a sympathetic nod. It's all right, what can you find on his arm though? Levi grinned and gave the infant a gentle prod in the cheek. I think it is his name looks like whoever tattoos these markings on his also named him. The mage with the red hair grinned. Really? Exclaimed Erza. What is it? The enchanted reader grinned. His name should be something akin to Uzumaki Naruto Erza lifted the baby boy back into her arms and grinned. As the young woman held the boy close to her, she muttered, Naruto-chan. Huh? Little Naruto put his tiny arms around Erza's neck and fell asleep. Natsu began to laugh. The young man and his cat laughed and exclaimed, who the hell would name their son after a ramen topping? Erza appeared behind Natsu with a sudden evil expression on her face. You got a problem with Naruto? Erza's voice made Natsu pale, and he shook his head rapidly. No, was his low whimper. Naruto is a terrific name Erza looked sternly at Natsu. Good she muttered, then resumed gently rocking Naruto, who was sleeping soundly in her arms. Her face was softly smiling as she listened to the boy in her arms breathe softly. She already felt a close bond with him. Mira-Jane glanced at the infant over her friend's shoulder. I think Naruto-chan thinks of you as his parent Erza-sana Euro. Erza gave Naruto a back pat while laughing sheepishly. The red-haired mage grinned broadly and said, well, I am way too young to be a mother, so I'll be his big sister at most. She then turned to face Mira-Jane. Do you want to hold him, Mira? The stunning fairy tale model grinned and nodded. Yes please. Mira-Jane exclaimed as she lifted the infant from Erza's shoulders after it had fallen asleep. Oh Euro, he is so precious. As the baby slept, Mira-Jane patted his back and rocked him gently, just like Erza. Gray ruffled the boy's head and grinned. He is Cutia Euro. Beside Gray, a tall, slender young lady with a large bust nodded in agreement with his remarks. Her name was Kana Alberona, and she had long, brown hair that hung down to the middle of her back. In addition to being one of the guild's top mages, Kana was unquestionably Fairy Tail's best drinker. While wriggling the baby's nose, Kana exclaimed, I don't think I've ever seen such blue eyes before. Elfman, Mira-Jane's younger brother, approached his sister and grinned down at the infant. Elfman had spiky hair the same color as his sister's, but his face was much more angular. He was a tall, muscular man. With great enthusiasm, the tall man said, Hey Ne-chan, let me hold him for a second, before giving her brother the baby. Mira-Jane gave him a smile and a nod. The tall man raised the infant to his height after welcoming him with open arms. Elfman held the boy high and exclaimed, Oh, I can tell that he is going to grow up to be a real man. Naruto was startled awake by the clamorous sounds and motions, and when he looked down, he saw Elfman holding him. The boy's eyes began to well up with tears, and then he let out a cry and flailed his arms and legs. Elfman was taken aback and unsure of what to do. Natsu gestured to Elfman while laughing. The young man rolled around on the floor, laughing, and exclaimed, You scared Naruto with your face, Elfman. Mira-Jane continued to smile while Gray and the others laughed at the big man's expense. As Naruto wriggled in Elfman's grasp, he noticed Erza standing directly beneath him. Bababa! Naruto rambled as he extended his arms to Erza, causing a lot of people to smile. Elfman smiled sheepishly as he returned Naruto to Erza. You should hold him, Erza Euro. Erza smiled and took Naruto back, saying, Okay Euro. When Erza took him back in her arms, Naruto immediately stopped crying and put his arms around her neck once more. Everyone could see that Naruto was already quite attached to his surrogate sister because of the broad smile on his face as he looked up at Erza. Erza gave the baby a smile in return and used one hand to pat his head. Happy grinned as she flew closer to Naruto. Curious, the cat asked, How old do you think he is right now? If he grows a few months every night, then he will be full-grown very quickly. Erza cocked her head sideways. The S-class mage looked down at the infant in her arms and remarked, I don't think he grows every night. Ever since early this morning he had been normal. I think something will cause him to grow quickly at times. But either way, we have to get him some proper clothes and some baby supplies. Mira-Jane gave a joyful nod. That's right, we should go buy some now. Erza gave her friend a nod. Okay, then we will both go. Kana also approached. Hey, I'll tag along. I have to buy some wine at the market anyway. Mira-Jane gave a nod. Okay, let's go. There are numerous markets in Magnolia Town, and one in particular sold supplies for kids. Together, Erza, Mira-Jane, and Kana were moving in that direction. Naruto was sitting quietly in Erza's arms, surveying his surroundings. The little boy's eyes were darting around the town, taking in all the festive sights, and he had a big smile on his face. Erza grinned at the joyful boy, just as he had done when they were traveling. He was insatiably curious and always found something to be happy about. The boy delighted Mira-Jane as well. As she gave the boy another pat on the head, the young woman remarked, Naruto-chan sure is a happy child. Kana nodded along, a smirk on her face as well. Yeah. Erza glanced up at the clouds and rubbed the back of Naruto lighting absently. The young mage whispered to herself, So what do we need to buy for Naruto? We need some clothes, diapers, milk bottles, milk formula. Mira-Jane folded her arms in a cross. As she crossed off each item with her fingers, the white-haired girl said, There are also baby toothbrushes, baby powder for the diapers, some light shampoo for when he has more hair, and maybe some semi-solid food. Before turning to face her two friends, Kana raised her arms. We would also need a baby carriage so we wouldn't have to carry him in our arms constantly. Then we need a crib, and maybe some toys for him to play with. Erza used her free hand to massage her temples. Looking at the happy baby, the young woman muttered, Geez. There sure are a lot of things to buy when we really think about it. Erza concluded with a smile, but I guess I have a lot of room at my place, so we should be fine. At what she said, Kana arched an eyebrow. So Naruto is going to live with you, Erza? The woman with the red hair gave a nod. Yep, I think currently I am the only one he is really comfortable with, so he should live with me. Mira-Jane grinned. Looking at her longtime friend, the cheerful woman chirped, well, we all live in the same building anyway, so we can all help you take care of Naruto-chan. Right, Naruto-chan? You have a lot of older sisters back in the dormitory. Kana grinned. With a deadpan expression, the drinker said, the older sisters are fine, but when you think about it, all the older brother figure he will have are all kind of weird. With each example, Kana shook her head and said, one of them likes to burn things, one doesn't like to wear clothes, one talks about men all the time, and one hits on every girl he sees. Oh my god, I don't even want to see how Naruto turns out if they're his only role models. Erza's face was genuinely smiling. Well, if that really happens, then we will know that he will be a perfect candidate for a fairy tale mage. Mira-Jane nodded enthusiastically, and Kana grinned. That's right. Erza, Mira-Jane, Kana, and Naruto spent the next few hours exploring the market and eventually purchasing the majority of the items they required. Erza had no trouble gripping the numerous bags they had because she was accustomed to carrying around very heavy loads. Along with everything else they might need to care for a baby, they had purchased a lovely crib for Naruto. Kana had purchased enough wine for the evening as well. In addition to being awake for the entire few hours they spent shopping, Naruto had been having a great time simply observing his surroundings while he sat in Erza's arms. The boy had been giggling almost non-stop the entire time, and he would constantly turn and twist around Erza to see what was going on. Mira-Jane had purchased a tiny ice cream cone for the infant to lick on since she thought he was getting cuter by the second. As she stumbled out of the market, Kana dabbed at her perspiration on her forehead. Finally, we got everything right? Erza nodded and grinned. As she embraced Naruto closer to her, the attractive woman declared, yeah, we have everything we need. Erza and the infant boy caught Mira-Jane's attention. Excuse me, Erza-chan. Would holding Naruto-chan so close to your armor hurt him? Erza pondered Mira-Jane's words in silence for a moment before she abruptly went pale. The S-class mage exclaimed. Ah! As she swiftly moved the Noi farther away from her chest. Erza frantically asked, are you okay, Naruto? As she examined the boy to check for wounds. Erza cried out, how can I be so careless? As she put on her typical blue scarf and buttoned shirt again. Naruto simply kept grinning and laughing at Erza. The boy put his hand on Erza's cheek and rambled, ba-ba-ba. Mira-Jane grinned. Oh, he's fine, don't worry, Erza-chan. Kana put one hand on her hip and laughed. The brown-haired girl laughed and said, you know, I think Naruto is the only male who could touch Erza's cheek to casually and not be beaten half dead. Erza grinned. You got that right. As the sun was about to set, the three women and one infant made their way back to Fairy Tale with all of their bags. There were lots of bright lights in the streets, and all the night vendors were getting ready for their regular business hours. When Naruto patted Erza to get her attention, he was beaming broadly, and the young woman merely nodded in agreement. Mira-Jane shifted her face in front of Naruto and giggled at the young boy once more. Mira-Jane chirped, hello Naruto-chan. Look at this, as she changed her face to Happy's. Happy as cute eye? With a laugh, Naruto gestured with his hands, bababa. Mira-Jane simply reverted to her usual self and laughed melodiously. Mira clapped her hands together and said, Erza-chan, can I hold him again? Erza laughed. As she gave Naruto to his other older sister, the woman said, of course Mira. Mira-Jane embraced Naruto near her full breasts. The woman shouted, you are just the cutest little baby. As she gently drew Naruto back to prevent him from choking. And you will be the most handsome man in Fairy Tale when you grow up. Kana nodded and grinned. Yep, he will surely have all the ladies fighting for him. Erza was listening to a random group's conversation as the small group was all returning to their guild. Erza pointed Kana and Mira-Jane over to the talking group, who appeared to be intoxicated, as they were simply strolling in front of them. One word in particular caught Erza's attention during their conversation. Eisenwald. One of the men stumbled around against his friends and muttered, I am sure of it. I will be able to break the seal of lullaby. A second man nodded and laughed. Whatever man. But if you do, Eisenwald will be unstoppable. Mira-Jane stopped Kana before she could use her card magic to confront the group. As she rocked a drowsy Naruto in her arms, the woman said, not now Kana-chan. Come back to the guild so we have time to think this over. Erza gave a nod. I agree. Let's go. Naruto reached for Erza after glancing over at her from Mirajane's shoulder. Mirajane grinned and returned Naruto to his closest companion, saying, "Baba." When Naruto completely relaxed into her grasp and rested his head on her shoulder, Erza grinned. Erza put her arms around Naruto and gave her a head pat. "Sleep for now, Naruto." Naruto closed his eyes and nestled deeper into Erza's neck crook. The boy mumbled, "Er-chan," before he dozed off. The sun was starting its daily cycle in Magnolia, a charming town, and it was morning. The sun's warm rays filtered through the numerous windows of Fairy Tail's female dormitories and fell on Erza Scarlet's fluttering eyes. After setting up the crib for Naruto, the S-class mage went to bed because she had a long night. She found shopping for the powerful mage to be more taxing than an S-class job, but it was fun most of the time. Erza only hoped Naruto would like the numerous items they had purchased for him last night, but it had to be done. Erza smiled softly at the thought of the baby boy. In the brief time since his arrival, he had truly made the guild very happy. Being the first infant to arrive at Fairy Tail at such a young age, Naruto brought a great deal of joy and happiness to the household. Because of Naruto's strong feminine side, Mirajane and Kana particularly enjoyed her company. When they returned to the dorms, Mirajana played with Naruto for 2 more hours after they had finished shopping for everything. Then came last night's high point, Naruto's first speech. Given that typical children under the age of 1 wouldn't be able to speak clearly just yet, Erza had truly believed that she had imagined it, but Naruto immediately repeated it intelligibly. Thinking back to the young boy who called her, Er-chan, made Erza smile. Erza was quite pleased that Naruto called her name first, even though it was strange for her to get so excited over such trivial things. Pushing herself out of bed, the S-class mage made her way to Naruto's crib. "Are you awake, Naruto-chan?" Erza was shocked to see how much Naruto had matured once more when she looked down into the crib. It was more than a few months this time. The boy now appeared to be nearly 2 years old. Now, Naruto had golden, spiky hair all over his head, with 2 bangs framing the sides of his face. The boy, of course, had grown taller, and his body took up nearly the entire crib. The sight caused Erza's mouth to drop slightly. As she slowly reached down for the boy, the young woman muttered to herself, What the hell?" It appeared that Naruto's growth had ripped open the seams of the small pajamas Erza had purchased the previous evening, causing them to tear apart. "Why do you randomly have overnight growth spurts?" One hand reached up to rub the boy's right eye, causing his eyes to twitch. When the boy's eyes finally opened, he saw Erza staring down at him with a startled expression. When Naruto saw Erza, he clapped his hands together and grinned. Naruto exclaimed, "Er-chan," in a voice that was a little more composed than it had been the night before. With a sigh, Erza smiled sweetly at Naruto. While picking up the boy, the girl said, "Good morning, Naruto-chan." Naruto put his arms around Erza's neck and nuzzled her, "Er-chan." The S-class mage was concerned that Naruto's sporadic growth spurts would shorten his life, but she had no idea why he would grow so quickly. In order to prevent Naruto from becoming an elderly man in a few months, Erza fervently hoped that the growing would soon resume its normal pace. The red-haired girl closed her eyes and gave the boy a gentle hug because she didn't want Naruto to grow up too soon. Erza merely grinned. The girl said to herself, "Well, I can just hope for the best," before giving Naruto a back pat. "Let's get you some breakfast, Naruto-chan." As she held the 2-year-old boy in her arms, a catatonic Mirajane exclaimed, "What happened to Naruto-chan?" It was safe to say that everyone was completely stunned when Erza brought Naruto back to the guild to show the other members what had happened to the boy. When Erza told them that Naruto grew a few months overnight, they were a little skeptical, but after the boy suddenly jumped a year and a half ahead of schedule, they completely believed her. Since they had just been playing with the young toddler last night, Mirajane and Kana were the ones who were most taken aback by the abrupt change. Erza crossed her arms together and sighed. "See what I mean? Naruto-chan just randomly grows overnight." Mirajane gave Naruto a cheek kiss. As she held the boy close, the white-haired girl asked, "Oh, are you okay, Naruto-chan?" Naruto laughed at his benevolent older sister and put his arms around her neck, saying, "His body must have been stretched out pretty intensely if he grew so much in such a short time." As she sat down beside Mirajane and Naruto, Kana also had a worried expression on her face. "He seems to be all right. But we really have to ask Master about this as soon as he gets back." Mirajane gave her friend's words a nod. The girl rocked Naruto up and down and said, "Master should be back by tonight, or tomorrow morning at the latest." Erza simply nodded silently in agreement with Mirajane's statement. Hopefully he would be able to explain what is happening to Naru-chan. Sitting opposite Mira-Jane, Natsu and Happy were both fixated on the infant. Natsu put his chin on his palm and remarked, "The little guy sure is curious. He's been looking all over the place for 10 minutes already." Sitting quietly in Mira-Jane's arms, Naruto was idly scanning the guild. The boy rambled, "Bababa," as he noticed Happy hovering close by. Happy let out a cry of shock and agony as Naruto reached up with one hand and caught her by the tail. When Happy was within reach, the boy gave him a hug while laughing as he pulled the cat down. Naruto grinned broadly as he looked up at Erza, pleased that he had captured the cat. "Er-chan!" the boy exclaimed. Natsu was mildly amused that Happy was being used as a baby's toy, while Lucy, who was seated next to him, giggled at the sight. Lucy admired the boy playing with the cat and said, "Naruto-chan wouldn't hurt you, Happy, just play with him a little." The boy's spiky hair is ruffled by the blonde girl's hand. "You know, his spiky hair kind of reminds me of you, Natsu." While Mira-Jane smiled and gave the boy a tighter hug, Natsu smirked as he turned to face Lucy. "As I mentioned last night, I'm certain that Naru-chan will be the most attractive man in Fairy Tail when he reaches adulthood." Mira-Jane chimed as she smoothed Naruto once more. An elderly man who had spent a lot of time in Fairy Tail, Macau, crossed his arms and sighed. The man whispered to himself, "I don't think I will agree with you on that." Naruto let go of Happy and reached for his favorite person after Erza gave him a pat on the head. The boy joyfully exclaimed, "Er-chan," as Erza lifted him up once more. Breathless, Happy flew back to Natsu. The cat landed on top of Natsu's head and muttered, "And Naruto really has a strong grip." Mira-Jane got to her feet and gave Naruto a smile. Naruto turned to face the girl, who said, "Hey Naru-chan, can you say my name?" As his older sister spoke, Naruto fixed his gaze on her lip and began to move his own lips in a similar manner. "I am Mira-Jane. Can you say Mira?" he asked. Naruto patted his own face and muttered, "Am Mira." Mira-Jane nodded and gave a melodic laugh. "Yes," the girl joyfully exclaimed. "You are so smart, Naru-chan." Grinning, Erza gave Naruto to Mira-Jane. Erza returned to her serious business, saying, "Mira, I'm going to ask you to take care of Naruto-chan for the day. I still have to follow up on what we heard on the streets last night. I need to find out more about these people's relations with Eisenwald and what lullaby is." When Natsu, Gray, and Lucy heard the name lullaby, they all became excited. Natsu got up and said, "Hey Erza, we ran into some people who were talking about some lullaby too. We got into a fight with them just a few days ago." Gray gave a nod. "Yes. They were saying something about lullaby, but they fled before we could ask anything else." Erza returned the nod. Erza shocked many by saying, "We also heard something about them last night, and we think they are affiliated with Eisenwald." Eisenwald was a dark guild member who was well known for its voracious appetite for gold. Still in Mira-Jane's arms, Naruto looked around, unaware of what was happening, and said, "They were talking about unsealing something called the lullaby, and if they are Eisenwald, that can only be a bad thing." The eyes of Lucy and Levi widened abruptly. Levi glanced at her fellow guild members and remarked, "Hey, I think I've read about something called the lullaby before. It is some sort of killing magic." Lucy gave a nod in agreement. The blonde girl hesitantly whispered, "And it is not just any killing magic. It was said that whoever listened to the music of the lullaby would die right away. But it was just a story from an old book, we don't know if it is actually true." Erza gave a headshake. Erza turned to face Natsu and Gray and declared, "It doesn't matter, all we know is that Eisenwald is up to something, and we have to stop them before they succeed. You two will come with me, I will need the help if we are going to go up against an entire guild." Erza's request for assistance on a job was nearly unprecedented, and many were shocked. Mira-Jane gazed at the group in shock while holding Naruto in her arms. "Wow. Erza, Natsu and Gray, this may be the strongest team in Fairy Tail." The idea of taking on a whole guild made Natsu smile. The young man thundered, "Yosh!" and slammed his fists together. "Let's do this." With a sigh, Gray got to his feet. As Natsu scowled at him, the man muttered, "It's not like I need Natsu to come along. But since this is so important, I'll deal with it." Erza crossed her arms and grinned. "Good, we will leave in 1 hour." One of the busiest locations in Magnolia was Magnolia Station, which served as the town's primary trade route and was where many magic merchants would erect their own stands. Many towns in the Fury are connected by trains, and Erza intended to go straight to Eisenwald to confront them about their ulterior intentions. The last thing Natsu and Gray needed was for Erza to chastise them for being late. By that time, They were already packed and prepared to leave. Natsu crossed his arms and leaned against one of the station's pillars. As Happy nibbled on a fish beside him, the young man muttered, "Where is Erza? She told us to be here in an hour and she is late." Gray agreed with a grunt. Looking over his shoulder, the ice mage saw Lucy sitting on a bench with trepidation. "Don't let her hear you say that, she'll just be angry and beat you up. Why are you here anyway, Lucy? I thought Erza only asked us to come?" The blonde beauty frowned up at Gray while clutching her pet celestial being, Pion. "Mirajane-san told me to come. She said that I have to look out for you and Natsu and stop you two from destroying too many buildings." Lucy grumbled. "It's not like I wanted to come." With a simple shrug, Gray turned to face Erza, who was approaching them while a mountain of objects loomed behind her. Natsu and Lucy were also a little taken aback by the scene. It was amazing that Erza was able to drag her luggage on as if it were light. Natsu put his arms around his waist. "What the hell, Erza? Why are you bringing so many things?" Erza simply stared at Natsu. As she paused in front of the group, the red-haired beauty explained, "We are going up against one of the most infamous dark guilds in Fury. I need to bring more sets of armor just in case. I can't fit everything in my magic space, you know." Lucy got to her feet and turned to her group. The girl hurried in first so she wouldn't have to wait for Erza to push her belongings in, saying, "Let's just get on the train now, it's about to leave." In order for Erza to store her belongings there without other travelers grumbling about the cramped space, the fairy tale group grabbed a cart at the end of the train. They were lucky that there weren't many people on the train because it was a relatively slow season. Erza sighed as she completed organizing her belongings and sat down. The S-class mage closed her eyes and leaned back against her seat, saying, "It will take us almost the whole day to get to our stop, so take this time to rest up." The others followed suit. Erza was a little concerned that Naruto would be searching for her while she was away, but she couldn't help but think of him. She wouldn't be able to see him until the following day if Naruto experienced another growth spurt during the night. "Er-chan." Erza sighed and shook her head. As she made every effort to fall asleep, the young woman thought, "I'm so worried I am starting to hear Naruto-chan's voice." Happy gave Erza a shoulder pat and said, Erza?" Opening her eyes, Erza saw the cat hovering in midair. The young mage asked, a little irritated, "What is it, Happy?" Happy simply gestured silently to the top of Erza's pile of bags, and when Erza and the other people in the booth looked up, they saw a grinning Naruto scanning the area with excitement. As they turned to face Erza, Natsu, Gray, and Lucy all had wide eyes. Before realizing what was going on, Erza gazed at Naruto for a few moments. Erza exclaimed, "Naruto-chan?" as she got to her feet and hurriedly embraced Naruto. The S-class mage put the young boy on her lap and demanded, "What are you doing here?" Naruto simply waved his hands and laughed, "Er-chan." With a laugh, Gray gave the boy a head pat. As Natsu nodded in agreement, the young man remarked, "He must have crawled into your huge pile of stuff while you were packing. I got to say that the little guy really has a sense of adventure." Lucy gave the young boy a head pat. "He must have wanted to follow you here, but I thought Mirajane-san was looking after him?" Mirajane had just finished preparing Naruto some soft oatmeal and was on her way back to Fairy Hills, the female dormitory in Fairy Tale, to give the boy his lunch in the main lobby. The young woman with the white hair was grinning as she considered all the entertaining games she could teach Naruto. She had already set up a number of board games that she would play with Naruto later. As she made her way back to the lobby area, Mirajane exclaimed, "Naru-chan, it's time for lunch," but noticed that the high chair she had put him in was empty. The woman looked around the room and asked herself, "What the? Where did Naru-chan go?" Mirajane was becoming frightened. She didn't know where the boy had fled to. "Naru-chan," the stunning woman exclaimed, "return to Mirane. We have no choice. We have to bring Naruto-chan with us." Erza sighed and cursed Mirajane inwardly, holding the boy in her lap. "I don't want to, and it is definitely dangerous, but we have to get to the next town as soon as possible, so we have to bring him back to the guild. It will be difficult to fight and protect the kid at the same time. Someone is going to watch over Naruto while we are confronting Eisenwald," Gray said, letting out a sigh and leaning his head against the window's side. Grinning, Lucy said, "I'll take care of Naruto-chan if we really have to fight later. I am not that much of a fighter anyway." She was referring to Erza. "That is good. If we are to have a battle later on, Lucy will watch over Naruto-chan at Euro," Erza said, nodding at the S-class mage. Then she turned to Happy, saying, "Happy should also stay with them so he could quickly tell us if they are attacked." "Aye, Erza," the flying cat said, nodding. Lucy grinned and leaned closer to Naruto, ruffling the boy's spiky hair and saying, "You really miss Erza-san, don't you? So much that you climb up all those boxes of luggage to follow her." Natsu laughed and patted Naruto's head as well, saying, "This is a brave little guy. I'm sure he will be a strong kid when he grows up." The train had begun to move, and Lucy and Gray sighed as Naruto pointed a finger at Natsu and giggled heartily. All of a sudden, everyone turned to look at Natsu and noticed that his face had turned pale as he covered his mouth with his hands. Erza smiled as she put her arms around Naruto and muttered, "Yes. But back to business," the group leader said. Leaning back fully in her seat, "We have reason to believe that some of them would still be there, and there might also be where they would launch their plan, because according to the information we have back in Fairy Tail, Eisenwald members were recently spotted in the next town." "But you saw some of them back in Magnolia last night, wouldn't there be a chance that they would be back there?" asked Gray, raising an eyebrow at the instructions. With his arms folded, the Ice Mage posed the question. "That may be possible, but it is less likely since they wouldn't risk catching Fairy Tail's attention before their plan is completely ready. According to what we heard last night, they still need some time to fully use the lullaby," Erza said, nodding in agreement with her friend as she distractedly ran her fingers through Naruto's hair. "But even if they are located in Magnolia, we still have many people back in the guild who would be able to stop them." "They better not be targeting us with lullaby," Natsu said, forcing his mouth open without throwing up and turning to face Erza. "If they do, then not only people from Fairy Tail would die. Many other civilians would too," Lucy said, clutching her chest nervously. As he closed his eyes in contemplation, Gray shook his head and said, "As horrible as this sounds, I don't think Eisenwald would waste such an opportunity to kill a mass of people. They must have some target in their minds already." Gray's statement prompted Erza to nod, saying, "Yes, there must be something they're planning." "Are we even going to find anything in Oniba's town?" Natsu grunted, swallowing. "They were the few months ago. The chances of us finding them there are very slim," the irritated young man inquired. "This is the only lead we have, so we have to stick with it," Erza muttered as she peered out the train window. The 5 humans and 1 cat took an additional 2 hours to arrive in Oshibana town, and most of them had slept well enough to spend the next few hours exploring the town for information. Gray tried to block out the unsettling sounds of Natsu by falling asleep during the train ride, while White Happy, Erza, and Lucy played with Naruto, who had matured significantly since the previous night and who learned a lot of words from the few adults in the 2 hours they spent with him. They were all taken aback by how intelligent Naruto was. He picked up everything they taught him almost immediately, and soon he would be able to speak with others. As he rode in Lucy's arms, Naruto muttered, "El Luce," and patted her cheek. "Hello." "Hello to you too, Naruto-chan," Lucy said, laughing and kissing Naruto's cheek. With a squeaky little voice, Naruto said, "Hello Gray," and reached over to pat him on the shoulder. Before clapping his hands together and creating a tiny ice figure of a fairy tale symbol for Naruto, the young man said, "Hello kid." Gray grinned and patted his head. "Here you go, Naruto." With wide eyes, Naruto accepted the ice figure from Gray. "Thank you, Gray," the boy said, turning to face Erza. "Er-chan, I got a new toy to play with," the boy exclaimed, waving the toy around in an attempt to show Erza. "It's a fairy tale symbol, Naruto-chan. Someday you might have that mark on you too," the woman said with a hopeful expression as Erza laughed and planted a kiss on Naruto's head. Fairy tale," the boy said, holding the ice shape delicately in his hands. Looking around, Happy flew to Lucy and said, "Hey, where is Natsu?" The cat, a little alarmed, asked. Erza watched their train go down the track, and her eyes grew wide. "Shit." The young mage stepped forward slightly and exclaimed, "Is Natsu still on the train?" With a sideways head tilt, Naruto said, "And Natsu?" Quote. Lucy and Happy nodded anxiously as Gray crossed his arms and grunted in frustration. "Damn the idiot," the ice mage muttered, turning to face the group. "We have to go get him. With motion sickness like his, I don't know how long he's going to last on the train." "Yes. Let's go find a power car. We'll need it in order to catch the train," Erza said with a sigh and a nod. Fortunately for the fairy tale group, Onshibana town was one of those towns, and Erza was able to easily obtain one of those vehicles. A power car is something that uses magical power with a SE cord to propel itself, which would turn a mage's magical energy into kinetic energy. Many towns would offer traveling mage the use of these cars when they passed. It has already become one of the many common uses of magic throughout the world. The only person in the car who didn't care about the risks of traveling at such high speeds was Naruto, who was leaning back against Lucy's chest and laughing merrily as the car sped across the big town and toward the train station. Lucy and Happy were pushed backwards until their backs were attached to the back of the car, and Gray was struggling to hold onto the roof of the car so he wouldn't fall off. As the car turned, Gray grunted, "Erza!" The young man bellowed, "You are moving too quickly. You won't be able to fight later if you use too much of your magic." The red-haired beauty shook her head, saying, "Without Natsu, we can't fight Eisenwald, so we need to catch up to the train." Unfortunately for the cat, Naruto wanted to see him, so he pulled the cat over to him and held Happy to his chest, despite Happy's attempts to remain motionless as Erza pumped more power into the car. Naruto was unusually strong for his age, and Happy was forced to try to breathe as the boy squeezed the air out of his lungs. Lucy smiled at the boy and Happy before leaning down to give Naruto a quick kiss on the head. The group heard a loud explosion just ahead of them, and when they looked forward, they saw a glow that looked like Natsu's flames and some smoke coming from over the hill. "Those are Natsu's flames." Gray smirked and pointed ahead. Erza gave a nod. "Yes, we are near." Erza had intended to drive up directly beside the train so that Gray could climb on board and grab Natsu, but the young man in question abruptly blew out of the train, so it was no longer necessary. Gray smirked as he saw his friend safe from the blast, but that quickly changed when Natsu's face crashed right into him. The train was soon in sight, and everyone could see that one part of it was on fire. "You are such a fool. Goddammit, Natsu." With his hands on his forehead, Gray exclaimed as he flew out of the car. "Good catch, Gray," Erza said, laughing as she hurriedly brought the car to a stop. When he looked up to see his friends, Natsu rubbed his head on the ground and asked, "When did you guys get here?" With a lightheaded expression on his face, the young man inquired. "Are you okay, Natsu?" Lucy and Happy asked as they exited the vehicle and hurried to Natsu. As she knelt beside the Dragon Slayer, the blonde girl questioned, "What happened? Why did you blow up the train?" Happy hugged his best friend and cradled Natsu's head with his body. Leaning against the car's window, Naruto rose from the seat and exclaimed, "Natsu!" With a broad smile on his face, the boy exclaimed. Natsu got up and clapped his face. "I decided to teach him a lesson because there was a bastard on the train who was insulting Fairy Tail," the young man muttered, glaring at the train's direction. "If the train hadn't started moving, I would have beaten the living daylights out of him." Erza folded her arms and said, "Who are you fighting with?" The Dragon Slayer cocked his head, muttering nonchalantly, He was just some guy from Eisenwald." After a few seconds, it dawned on him, "Oh hey." With a growl, Erza struck Natsu in the back of the head, saying, "Baka." As the young man rested his head on the ground, the young woman exclaimed, "We are searching for individuals from Eisenwald." Naruto clapped his hands together and laughed at Natsu from where he stood. "Then we must catch the train. That guy might be meeting up with the rest of his guild somewhere," Gray said with a sigh before leaping back onto the car. The S-Class mage knew that they had to stop Eisenwald at all costs because if the Dark Guild actually got a spell like Lullaby in their hands, they could wipe out most of the guilds in fury in a matter of days. Happy dragged Lucy and a reluctant Natsu back into the car, and Erza sat in the driver's seat once more. Erza poured a lot of her magical power into the car, and as before, the car was moving too fast for the comfort of the passengers. Erza drove the car off the road and up into the hills to cut some corners of the track, hoping that this would allow them to catch up to the train quickly enough. The good news was that they were attempting to follow a train, so all they had to do was follow the train tracks to find its location. The Dragon Slayer's primary weakness was transportation, which was pretty pitiful. Naruto was once again sitting on Lucy's lap, laughing and giggling in the car, surprising the other by how much he was enjoying the fast ride. Natsu, on the other hand, was lying in the fetal position next to Lucy, trying his hardest not to throw up. Holding on to the car's roof, Gray grunted his teeth and said, "We'll catch the train, Erza." The man bellowed, "If you want to fight later, you'll need to save up on her magic." Erza shook her head, saying, "No, we can't take the chance of missing the train." The S-Class mage frustratedly replied, "We might never find another lead if we let this guy go." The SE plug was swelled from the pressure Erza was exerting on the vehicle. "There is no way we can let them use Lullaby anywhere at all." Lucy heard something outside the window and said, "Hey, I think I hear the train from here." Erza nodded and grinned, saying, "Yeah, I believe we are very near." When the car passed a final hill, the Fairy Tail team noticed that their train was still in its tracks, but that people were being flung out of it along with the luggage. A suspicious group was standing next to the train, and judging by the magical power they released from their bodies, it was clear that they were mages. Erza stopped and leapt out of the car, narrowing her eyes as she looked down at the scene. A robbery on a train? The beauty crossed her arms and muttered. The man muttered, "Hey," as he pointed down at a man with a black ponytail. That's the guy the first was fighting. He was bad-mouthing Fairy Tale and was from Eisenwald. Natsu crawled to the edge of the hill and looked down. Before analyzing the group beneath them, Gray leapt down next to Natsu and said, "So the other people are also from Eisenwald?" With so many people, Lucy appeared anxious. Is their entire guild present? Erza was staring at a man below with a menacing expression on her face. That's Aragor, Eisenwald's ace. Aragor was a very tall, lean, and somewhat muscular man with silver hair that was held pointing upward in spiky strands on top of his head, but that hung down to the left of his face in a distinctive tuft, sometimes partially covering it, and reaching down to his shoulders. His eyes were dark, and he had an elongated face with sharp features and somewhat pointed ears, but he did not appear to have eyebrows. Each of his eyes had a simple tattoo directly below it, which consisted of a pointed line that went down vertically, crossed by two more, larger horizontal lines. The upper portion of his body was similarly tattooed, but with much larger, intricate, and blue-colored motifs that took on spiraling forms and adorned his shoulders, biceps, pectorals, and back. "So that's Aragor no Shinigami," said the man, threatening Lucy and Happy, with a grunt. Erza sighed. "If he is here, then there is no mistaking it. They are Eisenwald and they really are planning something big." When the Eisenwald people had finished pushing everyone else off, the Fairy Tale group watched as they all boarded the train, and then the train was moving again, this time toward the next town. Lucy and the others returned to the car. Why would they steal a train? Wouldn't it be too simple to find them? Yes. But it does have speed, and it is the most direct route from town to town, the girl said angrily as Erza heard her nod from where she was. If they broadcast Lullaby in every station in every town, the death toll will be tremendous, so we have to stop them at all costs. Because trains were the most popular mode of transportation in Earthland, the stations would typically be packed with people. If Eisenwald were to attack the stations in the towns, not only would many people perish, but the entire country of Fury would be in complete chaos. The Fairy Tale group sped down the highway towards the next town in the hopes of catching up to the train. Oshibana town was going through its typical busy day, oblivious to the fact that a vengeful horde of dark mages was headed their way and would likely kill the majority of them within minutes of their arrival. Erza's thoughts about the situation grew increasingly dire. She could only use so much magical power to keep the car running for so long, and there were countless ways Eisenwald could use something so strong. From where he lay, Gray looked up. "Erza, Oshibana town is in sight, just a little more," the man said, gesturing ahead. Erza moaned. All right. Erza had no choice but to run to the station as quickly as possible because she could no longer care about public safety and knew that more people would perish if they failed to stop Eisenwald. The S-Class mage charged into the town without slowing down at all and blasted through all of the busy streets with abandon, sending people running in all directions to avoid the seemingly insane vehicle and the chaos it caused in the streets. Lucy peered out the window and shielded her eyes from the wind, saying, "The station is right in front of you." The Oshibana station was one of the busiest in Fury, but now there was a lot of people around it. A number of royal guards were enclosing the station's perimeter, which drew a sizable crowd. Erza leapt from the vehicle and approached the throng, asking, "What happened?" The woman muttered to herself before hearing from others that the guards were claiming that there had been a derailment and that the station needed to be closed, while others were claiming that a group of terrorists had taken over the station and that the royal guards were attempting to regain control. "They must have stopped here for some reason," said Gray, who was standing next to Erza with a sick Natsu on his back. "This must be their first target. We have to confront them now," Erza said, nodding and moving through the crowd. As the S-Class mage left the crowd and headed for the station, a group of guards noticed her and moved forward to stop her. Erza ignored them and simply used her fists to knock them all out. As the guards all fell to the ground, Natsu laughed. "That's Erza for you," muttered the young man with the pink hair, who was still trying not to throw. With a grunt, Gray began running after Erza, saying, "Stop avoiding me, you fool." As he accelerated as much as he could, the ice mage cursed at his friend, saying, "I will kill you if you vomit on my head." The blonde girl would prefer to stay in the car with the slightly annoying cat and the incredibly cute little boy. Lucy and Happy were back in the car watching Naruto, and they were both silently relieved that they didn't have to follow the other three into battle. Lucy had always wanted a younger sibling when she was younger, but her father was a jerk and her mother died, but she discovered that she could make a little brother out of Naruto, her surrogate brother from Fairy Tale. Lucy looked down at the boy and said, "Hi, Naruto-chan." However, the boy was nowhere to be seen, and the girl only noticed an empty seat. Where the hell did he go? Happy looked up at the catatonic girl while eating a fish and said, "I thought you were holding him?" Inside, Lucy died a little. Erza was going to murder her. Little Naruto hugged the wall as he moved slowly into the train station. No one paid much attention to the young boy slinking into the battle zone because the crowd and the guards were too busy concentrating on one another. With a smile on his face, the little blonde boy slithered into the station on his tiny legs. His arms were slightly out to the sides to keep his walking level because his balance was still developing. The boy muttered, "Er-chan?" while searching for his favorite person. As Naruto entered the station's main lobby, he heard a lot of noise. It seemed like there were a lot of people running around and even some people screaming in agony. When the boy approached the spacious area, he noticed that there was a throng of people running around, obstructing his view. He drifted off to the side and laughed as he ascended the stairs on the wall's side. Back in Fairy Hills, the boy had learned how to use the stairs after witnessing Erza ascending a set of them. Though he was still unable to see Erza, Naruto discovered that the higher he went, the more people he saw. However, Naruto noticed Erza holding a blade when he reached the second floor and the top of the stairs. Naruto clapped his hands together and giggled, "Er-chan." The boy saw Erza use her spears and blades to completely destroy anyone who attempted to attack her. Naruto saw that although there was only one Erza, many people were engaged in combat with him. The boy scowled as he stomped his foot on the floor and gestured down at the individuals engaged in combat with his favorite. Naruto felt a rush of energy come from his stomach and instinctively clapped his hands together. Naruto muttered, "Er-chan?" as he noticed a reflection of himself staring back at him from the side. After giggling at one another, the two boys started laughing. As they each produced an increasing number of clones of themselves, the two Narutos began to run in different directions. They planned to produce enough copies so Erza would have an equal number of supporters. The second floor was nearly entirely occupied by Naruto, and their numbers began to spiral out of control. The boys were running around in glee, knocking over tables and plants. As they stretched out to explore the second floor, the young children began to giggle and laugh about everything. When all the boys ran simultaneously and at the same pace, the boys' little pitter-patter changed to 100 stomps. When hundreds of young Narutos cried out in unison, "Er-chan!" the battle below them instantly came to an end. Erza was preoccupied with battling Eisenwald's weaklings before pursuing Aragorn. Her entire focus was on striking and blocking opponents in an effort to get rid of them as soon as possible. Erza was a little concerned about Naruto in the back of her mind, but she knew he was safe because he was in the car with Lucy and Happy. Erza initially believed she was having hallucinations, but as she was fighting, she began to hear Naruto's voice calling out for her. Titania thought to herself, "It can't be Naruto-chan. He's in the car right now." She slashed her blade down, sending several men in front of her flying back against a wall. She kept hearing sounds that sounded a lot like Naruto laughing and giggling while the S-class mage was fighting, and for some reason, they were getting louder. An Eisenwald grunt yelled, "What the hell is that?" and gestured up to the second floor. Erza couldn't resist looking up to the higher level herself, and she was completely taken aback by what she saw. Er-chan. The hundreds of Narutos up on the second floor caused vibrations that made the entire train station rumble a little. Fortunately, none of the young boys were taller than the railing, so none of them were pushed down to the first floor. They were all grinning broadly as they pushed around on the second level. Lucy and Happy arrived at the station at this point, and as they looked overhead, the first thing they saw was a frozen Erza. The cat and the blonde girl then looked up as well, and they were equally astounded by the sheer number of Narutos. Naruto was constantly poking his face through the gap between the railings and pointing down at his friends below. Nobody should be able to create so many clones. Erza, Lucy, and Happy had never seen anything like it. All of the clones simultaneously exclaimed, "They hit Er-chan," as they began to leap from the second story and descend to the numerous men brandishing weapons. The sight of hundreds of children jumping for them startled and slightly dislocated the Eisenwald residents. "What the hell is this?" Erza, Lucy, and Happy all observed as the massive swarm of Narutos engulfed the Eisenwald crowd, rendering some of the children unconscious due to their weight. The Narutos began to scuttle up on the taller men, repeatedly punching their heads, pulling their hair, and pinching their ears. Too many children were shouting and talking at once, making it difficult for the fairy tale group to understand what they were saying. Lucy was pointing shakily at the battle with her jaw on the floor. "What the hell is happening? How did Naruto-chan do this?" Erza was equally shocked, but she was able to rationalize her way out of it no matter how hard she tried. "I have no idea. One of Eisenwald's superiors, Kuraka, stumbled back in disbelief as a group of children rendered all of his men inoperable. The man yelled, "You bunch of fools, just hit the kid's back," before he was dragged into the massive crowd of children. The children simply poofed into a cloud of smoke when the men nodded and began to strike back. The cloud in the area made it impossible for the men fighting to see anything, and more clones were being thrown away. One by one, the men fell as the remaining Naruto continued to beat at their groins and temples. Nearly all of the men were dead when the smoke cleared, but Naruto was still alive in considerable numbers. Several Narutos screamed, "No hitting Erza," as they kicked the faces of the men who were already on the ground. The only person still moving was Kuraka, who ran as quickly as he could from the room. Erza took a slow step toward it, still in awe. "Naruto-chan?" All of the Narutos grinned and began to run in her direction when they heard Erza's voice, but they all stumbled over the Eisenwald men's bodies and the majority of them poofed out of existence. The original Naruto was the only one still alive. He got up and jumped straight into Erza's open arms, continuing to run. "Erza!" exclaimed the boy, nuzzling Erza in spite of her armor. Erza laughed as she turned to face the fallen men and the boy who was laughing in her arms. Erza started to laugh, but she choked out, "Kami." Naruto-chan defeated all of those men. Despite the circumstances, Lucy and Happy also found the scene hilarious. It was simply too good to be true. A 2-year-old boy and his hundreds of clones just clobbered the army of one of the biggest dark guilds in Fury. Although they didn't know what the boy did or how he did it, it was undoubtedly very beneficial. The fact that the men in Eisenwald were so frail that the boys were able to land on them and repeatedly deck them in the face was shocking. Wriggling in Erza's arms, Naruto put a hand on her cheek and grinned at her. "Erza okay?" The idea that Naruto was merely attempting to keep her safe and unleashed some kind of magic made Erza smile. The young woman kissed Naruto's cheek and muttered, "Yes, Naruto-chan." With a lovely smile on her face, the S-class mage held the boy close to her chest and said, "Erza is perfectly fine." She then slowly turned back to the others. Lucy grinned at the endearing scene. "Naruto-chan really loves you, Erza." The S-class mage ruffled Naruto's hair and nodded. Erza turned back to Lucy and Happy and said, "Yes, he does. But on a side note." The young woman angrily exclaimed, "Why the hell did you two let Naruto-chan out of your sight?" Happy and Lucy jumped back, looking pale. Lucy looked down at the ground and stammered, "He slipped right out of the car after you. Sorry, Erza." Happy simply nodded, too afraid to say anything. Erza turned away with a grunt. As she began to make her way to the terminal area, the S-class mage muttered, "You two better not do anything like that again. Or else." Gray was frantically searching one of the station's numerous corridors for the location of Erigor's escape, but he was completely unsuccessful. A split end occurred a few minutes ago, and he and Natsu had made the decision to part ways. However, nothing appears to be happening on his end of the station. It sounded vaguely like Naruto yelling, but the ice mage had heard something very loud back out in the lobby a few minutes ago and had no idea what it was. The young mage gave a headshake. As he turned another corner, the man thought, there is no way that the kid made it out of the car with Lucy and Happy both there. As Gray sprinted through the corridors looking for a man who could murder hundreds of people in less than a minute, his desperation grew. It would be impossible to predict what the slightly insane man would do with such evil magic, and Lullaby was far too dangerous to be in the care of someone like Erigor. The ice mage was aware that Lullaby would kill a lot of people if he didn't find Erigor quickly. Damn it! Cursed Gray inwardly as he searched for Erigor's presence but was unsuccessful. But the young man's attention was drawn to a door up ahead. Would Erigor be using the intercom to play the flute in the broadcast room? When the signal of an intercom broadcast reached every speaker in the station, Gray's fear came to life. Someone was going to broadcast something. With a scowl in his eyes, Gray stormed through the broadcast room door, prepared to kill Erigor at first sight, but he was not prepared for what he saw. It was not a lullaby, but there was a faint feedback that reverberated throughout the station. A curious Naruto held the microphone in his hands and said, "Erza? Where is Erza?" Gray stood at the door, his mouth agape, while Naruto's babbling reverberated throughout the station. What are you doing in here, kid?" When Naruto saw Gray, he waved and grinned. "Hello, Gray," the boy said, his childish voice echoing throughout the station. Naruto noticed someone behind Gray as he began to approach him, behind Gray. At that moment, the ice mage felt it and spun around, his eyes widening as a black strap slapped him across the face and sent him flying back. When Gray realized he was going to collide with Naruto, his eyes widened, and he immediately twisted his body as much as he could. Nevertheless, the child was falling to the ground as Gray's body collided with the stool Naruto was standing on. "Ahhhh!" the boy exclaimed as he struck the floor. Gray's eyes widened once more, and he stood up fast. Naruto. However, the man's body abruptly vanished with a puff of smoke before he could get to the boy. Erza, Naruto, Lucy, and Happy were all on their way to the station's largest balcony. All of the people who had gathered below could be seen clearly from the deck that extended out towards the streets. The first thing that needed to be done was to evacuate the area in order to reduce the number of hostages that Erza could hold, because there was a serious risk that he would attempt to use Lullaby to kill everyone nearby. Erza approached, looking down at the crowd of people while holding a magic voice amplifier. The crowd below appears to have become aware of Erza's presence and has begun to quiet down in anticipation of hearing from the young lady. Erza said, "Everyone," in a commanding tone. The people below began to appear apprehensive and afraid as they said, "Dark mages have taken over the station and they have the power to kill everyone in this area. Quickly scatter away from the station if you value your lives." The civilians began to flee the station as the message became clear to them one by one. People were running everywhere, and the hysterical crowd of people trampled over numerous stands and stores. It was chaos and mayhem. Erza let out a sigh of relief. Chaos was preferable to the city center being covered in civilian corpses. Since Erza no longer had a large group of people in one location that he could use as hostages, the situation had significantly improved. Lucy scowled as she embraced Naruto. "What do we do now?" Happy shook his head and hovered next to Lucy. "We should meet up with Natsu and Gray to see if they found anything." Erza turned back quickly to the station's main building, her eyes suddenly widening. She was shocked to see that the building was surrounded by a sizable wall of swirling wind. Lucy and Happy were also amazed by what they saw. It appeared that those inside would be trapped inside and those outside would not be able to enter. A spooky voice from above murmured, "So you fairy tale pests got rid of all the people around the station, huh?" Erza frowned up at Erza, who was grinning as he looked down at her. Angrily, the S-class mage muttered, "What now, Erza? You no longer hold any hostages. Come down here and fight me." Erza shook his head and laughed. The man fell silently to the ground and mumbled, "I wish I can, Erza-san. I have always wanted to fight one of the S-class mages of fairy tale." Before Erza could respond, Erza held up his hand and blasted her with wind. "But I am on a tight schedule today and don't have the time." Erza was hurled back toward the wind wall. The young woman easily slipped into the wall, but she was now cut off from her group. The ease with which Erza was thrown back astounded both Lucy and Happy. The blonde girl exclaimed, "Erza-san," as she moved toward the wall. "Are you all right?" Erza raised his hand behind Lucy's back once more, and Happy saw it. While racing toward Lucy, the cat yelled, "Lucy, look out," and attempted to shove her aside. When the blonde girl jumped in surprise, she unintentionally let go of Naruto. Naruto was on the ground with a sore arm as Happy and Lucy were blown back into the wind wall. The boy stood up and turned to face the wind wall. With tears in his eyes, Naruto muttered, "Er-chan. Lucy." Naruto was startled when Erza materialized behind him, causing him to stumble back. The tall man smiled down at Naruto menacingly and muttered, "So, you are the boy who messed up my men and screwed up a part of my plan. What should I do with you?" Erza was flaring her aura violently, and Lucy and Happy were looking horrified. "If you lay one finger on him, I will hunt you down and kill you." Erza turned to Erza and laughed. "What are you going to do about it, Titania? You can't even get out of that barrier?" Naruto gazed up at the frightful man who was crying, "Er-chan." As Erza got closer to Naruto, Erza became very desperate. The young woman screamed, "Naruto-chan," and slashed her blade as hard as she could against the wind wall, but she was pushed back. Then she had an idea. "Naruto-chan, run towards me," she exclaimed, realizing that at least she would be there to defend Naruto if he managed to reach her side of the wall. Erza grabbed Naruto by the shirt as he began to approach Erza. The man held Naruto to his face and grunted, "Oh no you don't. You little brat, instead." "Naruto-chan!" Erza exclaimed frantically. As he swung Naruto around in his grasp, Erza began to laugh. As the man noticed Naruto glaring at him, he asked, "Are you angry, little guy? Are you angry that I heard Erza over there? But there is nothing you can do about it, you little bastard." Naruto was furious because he was experiencing a tingle in his stomach once more, and it was getting stronger. The wind-dark mage threw the boy from side to side while still laughing. "You know what? Maybe I should hit Erza again. Would you be even more mad if I did that?" As his anger grew, the boy whispered, "And no hitting Chan." Aragorn gave Naruto a head slap while laughing. Erza was staring at the scene with a look of pure rage in her eyes, saying, "What did you say, boy? Talk louder." She had vowed to destroy Aragorn no matter what if she ever left the Windwall. Suddenly, Naruto's body radiated an odd aura that made it glow bright blue. The boy screamed, "No hitting Chan," and kicked Aragorn in the face to vent his rage. Erza, Lucy, and Happy were all taken aback when they witnessed Naruto knocking Aragorn to the ground. Erza was aware that it was a very forceful kick, but despite the fact that Naruto had no ground to support his strength because Aragorn was holding him in midair, his kick managed to knock a man who was significantly heavier than him to the ground. The reason was the kick's velocity. Despite Aragorn's lightweight, Naruto's kick was so quick that it sent him to the ground. As he stood back up, Aragorn was shocked as well. The man held his extremely sore jaw and exclaimed, "Why, you brat? The boy might have broken some bones." Power continued to surge through Naruto's body, which was still glowing a gentle blue. He was clenching his jaws like a vice grip and holding his fists together tightly. With no more tears in his eyes, the boy looked up at Aragorn and muttered softly, Stop." The boy threw all of his strength into a single leap and yelled, "Stop hurting my Chan," as loudly as he could. As the boy sped toward him at blinding speeds, Aragorn's eyes widened in shock. Aragorn screamed in agony as Naruto's body crashed right into his chest. Aragorn was hurled from his position and struck a building wall directly. The man was very exhausted, and his body caused multiple deep fissures in the wall. Aragorn was on all fours coughing violently because he thought his lung was nearly fractured and some of his ribs were broken. In shock, the man turned to face the child who was also on his hands and knees. The child was not human, and no typical child could have ever done what he had just done. Happy and Lucy were both staring at the ground when they saw how badly Aragorn had been hit. Little Naruto had just struck Eisenwald's strongest mage with a huge blow. Being the one closest to Naruto, Erza was even more taken aback than the others. She had never experienced Naruto's magic before and was astounded by his ability to produce such a great deal of power. Erza had never felt anything as strong and tangible as Naruto's aura, despite the fact that it was not an overpowering amount of magical power. It shouldn't have been possible, but the boy's strength was sufficient to launch Aragorn into a wall and totally altered his disposition. Naruto whimpered as he slowly stood back up on his tiny feet and looked around. Chan. Erza sprinted toward the wall. The young woman exclaimed, "Naruto-chan, come to Chan," loudly. "I'm over here. Come here." The boy's eyes were filled with tears as he turned to face Erza. Chan, the boy exclaimed, running as quickly as he could to his beloved Chan. Since Naruto was still on the ground, Aragorn was unable to capture him this time, and the boy managed to cross the wind wall. Naruto jumped into Erza's open arms and gave her the tightest hug he could with his small arms while sobbing loudly. The boy was shaking and crying from all the shock he had been through in the last few minutes. As soon as Naruto passed the wind wall, Erza reached out and embraced him firmly against her chest. Erza was incredibly relieved to be holding the boy in her arms once more. At last, he was no longer in danger from Aragorn. When Erza believed Aragorn was going to kill Naruto, she was more terrified than she had ever been in her life. Tears actually ran from her left eye. Erza's breathing evened out, and she ran her fingers through Naruto's hair. Lucy scooted over to them, grinning at what she saw. Erza-san. Happy patted Naruto's head while hovering over him. "Naruto, you are strong too." Erza took a step back and discovered Naruto dozing off in her arms, exhausted from everything he had done. "Sleep for now, Naruto-chan. Chan is here with you." Naruto had been asleep for 4 hours when the fairy tale group was in a car once more. Since then, a lot of things have happened, and Erza was glad the boy had slept through it all. Erza was a little upset that she didn't get to slam the man into a pincushion or a pile of minced meat, but it was excellent news that Natsu had ultimately defeated Aragorn. Erza wanted to kill the man as a precaution after what he had done to Naruto. After that, a man by the name of Kageyama took Lullaby away from them and made his way to Clover Town. The guild leaders' meeting was apparently Eisenwald's intended target from the beginning. They only took control of the train station to prevent others from traveling to Clover Town. However, Master Makarov convinced the feeble-minded and not wholly malevolent man to give up his crimes and refrain from playing the flute. However, nobody anticipated that the flute would later transform into a monster euro, some living magic that Zarif had produced many years prior. Despite the risk and difficulty of the battle, Erza, Natsu, and Gray were able to permanently destroy Lullaby. Even though the battle left Clover Town in ruins, the worst part is that the fairy tale group caused more damage than Lullaby. Now, Gray was driving the convenient magic car as the fairy tale group made their way back to Magnolia. Naruto wriggled around, his eyes twitching. When the boy had finally had enough sleep, he muttered, "Er-chan." When the boy finally woke up, everyone in the car was relieved that he was all right. The boy's voice made Erza smile broadly, and she embraced him more tightly. To prevent Naruto from sleeping against her hard armor, the S-class mage had returned to her usual buttoned blouse and blue scarf. Instinctively, Naruto put his arms around Erza's neck and nuzzled her. The boy wanted to be near his Er-chan because he was still a little afraid after his encounter with Aragorn. Erza grinned as she gave Naruto a back rub. "We are going home now, Naruto-chan. Just keep resting, okay?" Makarov grinned when she saw how affectionate and gentle her surrogate daughter was with the boy. The group had just finished recounting Naruto's adventures to the master when he asked, "So this little boy actually did all that? That is very hard to believe. I've never heard of such a young boy being so powerful." Lucy smiled and nodded. The girl exclaimed with excitement, "We know it's hard to believe, but we all saw it with our own eyes. Naruto-chan made hundreds of clones and trampled almost every one of Eisenwald's men by himself." Erza gave a proud nod. The woman gently patted Naruto's head and said, "Yeah, and he managed to knock Aragorn down twice. He had the most peculiar kind of magic I have ever felt." The boy wriggled in Erza's arms while Makarov examined him. Once again being his inquisitive self, Naruto scooted closer to the gravely ill Natsu, who was lying down next to Erza. With a giggle, the boy began prodding the sick dragon slayer's face. Happy, Lucy, and Erza all grinned and giggled at what they saw. He looked at the boy who made his children happy, and the master began to smile himself. The others gave him a joyful glance as the elderly man remarked, "Well then. We'll ask Mira-chan to place a guild mark on Naruto when we get back. If this boy could really do all that, then he would be a perfect fit in fairy tale." Erza was grinning broadly and couldn't agree more. "Hi, thank you, master." After a long day of driving, the fairy tale group had finally returned to Magnolia, and they were overjoyed to be home. The group was relieved that the young man's somewhat pitiful case of motion sickness was no longer bothering them because Natsu had been complaining and rolling around in the car all the time. Naruto would constantly poke him in the face and laugh at the amusing expression that would appear on his face, even though he had a great time playing with an out-of-service Natsu on the car. Naruto had genuinely made Erza and Lucy very happy, and they enjoyed simply staring at the adorable and content boy. Erza had grown much closer to Naruto than she had been before the idea of losing him crossed her mind a few hours ago. The S-class mage didn't know why, but she didn't want to lose Naruto to anyone because he had already grown to be a significant part of her life. While Master Makarov was taking his time studying Naruto, Gray and Happy spent the majority of the journey back simply sleeping. The elderly man had seen a lot of young mages in his lifetime, but none this young. Naruto may not be a mage just yet, but he undoubtedly possessed some kind of magical ability, and given his age, it was quite potent. And if what Erza and Lucy said was accurate a euro, which Makarov thought it was a euro, Naruto's magical abilities would be enhanced even more if he found himself in dire circumstances. The master was happy to welcome the boy as the newest member of Fairy Tail because he was interested in seeing what the boy could actually do. Erza was holding Naruto in her arms once more, and both she and the boy were grinning. "We'll get you your guild mark when we get back, Naruto-chan," Erza said, rocking the boy in her arms. "I'm sure Mira would be very happy to give one to you." Lucy nodded and laughed. The blonde young woman grinned and said, "Not only that, she would also be very relieved that Naruto-chan was actually with us. Mira-san might still be looking all over for Naruto-chan." Gray laughed a little and nodded. Knowing Mira-chan, she would have flipped the entire guild to look for the kid. When the master and a few of Fairy Tail's strongest mages entered their guild, they were met with the customary joyous laughter. Everyone was having a good time just walking around the guild, and as usual, a lot of people were enjoying their early drink of sake. The day was ideal for drinking and partying, but the majority of them should have been working on missions. Naruto was looking around with his typical curiosity and enthusiasm as Erza pointed out objects to him. Both Lucy and Gray were taken aback by Erza's tenderness and love for Naruto. Since they were very young children, Gray had known Erza, but he had never seen this side of him. Erza, who was typically straightforward, strict, and authoritative, had never before shown such affection to anyone in the guild. Elfman smiled down at the elderly man and said, "Master, it's nice to have you back." Makarov put his hands behind his back and nodded. "It is good to be back. The guild is as lively as ever." Elfman grinned and nodded. Yes, it's a man. Natsu broke out in perspiration. I'm not even sure what that means, the man thought, turning to face Happy, who gave him a nod. With a drink in her hands and a smile on her face, Kana approached the group. The young woman mumbled, her face a little flushed from the sake. Well, Naruto-chan was with you all this time. Mira had been ripping her own hair out trying to find him. You better show him to her before she starts to look for him in other towns and cities. Erza sighed and held out her fists, looking guilty. Erza furrowed her brows and muttered dramatically, I'm sorry. It is my fault for not telling her earlier. Please, punch me. Erza's catchphrase caused the group to perspire, but before anyone could continue, a loud scream rang out into everyone's ears in the guild. With tears in her eyes, Mira-Jane exclaimed, Naru-chan, as she raced at breakneck speed in Erza's direction. Erza was shocked to see the other S-class mage grab Naruto out of her arms and begin choking him with her large breasts. Elfman merely shook his head while the majority of the guild's men gazed at Naruto with envy. Nei-chan. Mira-Jane was embracing Naruto tightly as she whirled around with delight. Ignoring the shocked and amazed looks, the stunning fairy tale model exclaimed, You scared me a lot, Naru-chan. I thought you ran away from the guild or someone kidnapped you. The young woman, terrified that Naruto was hurt while traveling with Natsu and Gray, exclaimed, Let me look at you. Are you hurt at all? At him. Erza became concerned when she noticed that Naruto was having trouble breathing. Hey Mira, you should loosen your grip. Mira-Jane released her hold after glancing up at her friend. To the surprise of many in the guild, the woman exclaimed, Erza-chan. With a hint of rage. Why didn't you tell me you took Naruto-chan on the mission? Do you know how worried I was? Erza apologized a little, but Naruto was the one who followed her. Hey, I didn't just bring him along with me. He climbed onto my luggage and followed me to the train station. With a sigh, the white-haired woman turned around and made her way back to her counter. Whatever, let's get you something to eat, Naru-chan. As her rival simply took Naruto away from her, Erza was trembling with rage. The S-class mage was about to leap at Mira-Jane when she exclaimed, Damn it, Mira-Jane! With rage. Erza and Mira-Jane both intimidated everyone. Although Mira-Jane had become much more subdued in the past 2 years, she was still one of the strongest mages in the guild, and if she and Erza were to battle again as they had a few years ago, the guild would undoubtedly be destroyed. Fortunately, the master was there, and he didn't even want to consider the possibility that Erza and Mira-Jane's rivalry would resurface. Everyone fell silent, so the master said, That's enough. Mira and Erza both became quiet. When Mira-Jane and many other guild members said, Mira-chan, after you feed Naruto we will give him an official Fairy Tail Guild mark. From now on he is an official member of Fairy Tail. They were beaming. Hi master. A joyful Mira-Jane chirped. Mira-Jane was giving Naruto some oatmeal at the bar when Erza and her group arrived. Given how hungry they were from the lengthy journey, Natsu, Lucy, and Happy all placed their own orders. Gray and Erza were seated across from Naruto at the table, watching the boy eat. Or perhaps Mira-Jane was merely attempting to feed Naruto, but for some reason, Naruto refused to eat the oatmeal and pushed Mira-Jane's hand away. Erza was quite pleased about it. Mira-Jane gave Naruto a head pat while scowling. Why don't you like oatmeal, Naru-chan? It's good for you. Natsu was eating a bowl of ramen when Naruto shook his head and gestured toward it. That. Erza ruffled Naruto's hair and grinned. As she placed another order for ramen from another waitress, the red-haired beauty asked, Do you want some ramen, Naruto-chan? As he attempted to say the word, Naruto glanced up at Erza, a little perplexed. Ramen. Ignoring the fact that someone else had ordered the ramen before Naruto, Mira-Jane chuckled at the boy's cuteness and hurriedly grabbed the other bowl from the kitchen. Erza and Mira-Jane watched as Naruto approached the big bowl of noodles by himself and grabbed the 2 chopsticks that were on it. He had no idea how to use them, and the bowl, which held a stick in each hand, looked adorable when he was looking very perplexed. Erza smirked as she snatched up the pair of chopsticks before Mira-Jane did. I'll feed you, Naruto-chan. The woman exclaimed with joy, grinning triumphantly at Mira-Jane. As Mira-Jane watched Naruto slurp the noodles with joy and a smile on his face, she pouted and gave Erza a slight glare. Lucy stopped eating her own lunch and giggled. When the boy pointed to a piece of barbecue pork and attempted to get Erza Rio to feed him it, the girl giggled even harder and said, Naruto-chan sure likes the ramen. Everyone who listened was shocked when Erza burst out laughing. The S-class mage chirped, Here you go, Naruto-chan, as she gave Naruto the barbecue pork. Naruto was grinning broadly as he chewed as quickly as he could with his tiny teeth. Natsu leapt from his seat with excitement, having already finished his lunch. Yash! The young man cried, smashing his fists into the air. Naruto! Exclaimed Natsu, startling Lucy and the other with his booming voice. Erza gave Natsu a fierce look. Shut the hell up, Natsu, Naruto-chan is eating. Natsu simply leapt onto the bar table and sat himself directly next to Naruto after Erza's intimidation failed for the first time. The young man grinned and said, "Hey Naruto. Can you teach me how you made that clone?" Natsu shook with anticipation and exclaimed, "I really want to learn it. If I can have more than one me in a fight, I can finally beat the crap out of Erza, Mistogen, and even Laxus. Then maybe Ji-chan would finally make me an S-class mage. Can you please teach me?" Naruto simply kept happily chewing his noodles and begged Erza to feed him more quickly. As everyone else started to perspire, Natsu kept his eyes fixed on Naruto with a broad smile. "Wow. He just plain ignored you, Natsu." Gray crossed his arms in amusement. Natsu patted Naruto's head after clapping his hands together. "Come on Naruto. Teach me." Elfman and Kana approached the bar with interest. As the rest of the guild realized what she was saying and turned to look, Kana asked, "What clone thing are you talking about, Natsu? Can Naruto-chan use magic already?" For a child so young to be using magic at all was practically unheard of. With a sly smile, Gray nodded and approached Naruto. A needle dropping out could be heard due to the extreme quiet in the guild. "Yeah. The kid here made hundreds of clones on the mission and just tramples many men from Eisenwald," one person said. Gray nodded as he turned back to face the audience. "Seriously. I'm not lying." With a sly smile, Erza allowed Naruto to take center stage. The red-haired beauty said affectionately, "Hey Naruto-chan. Can you show me how to make a clone again?" Naruto stopped eating as soon as he heard his favorite person's voice. Even the master, who had not yet recognized the boy's power, was staring at him. "I want to try to learn it again." As he clapped his hands together, Naruto's mouth was open. Suddenly, a poof appeared next to the boy, and when the smoke cleared, he was exactly like him. As they gazed up at Erza, both Naruto were grinning. Everyone in the guild, including Kana, Elfman, and Mirajane, was shocked by the boy. They had never witnessed anyone creating a clone without any kind of element, particularly not a young boy who was still unable to speak clearly. The master was taken aback by the boy because, according to his own sensory abilities, Naruto had effectively divided his energy in half when creating the clone, giving it half of his power. The boy must have extraordinary magical abilities if he truly created hundreds of clones. With a radiant smile, Natsu raised the real Naruto into the air. "Please teach me how to do that, Naruto." While in Natsu's arms, Naruto giggled but remained silent. Lucy gave Natsu a shoulder pat while laughing. "I don't think Naruto-chan can teach you when he can't even have conversations with people yet." After giving a nod, Mirajane seized the opportunity to embrace Naruto. The model chirped, "Yep. And it is time to give Naru-chan his guild mark." As the Naruto clone began to reach for the ramen. "Where do you want the mark, Naru-chan?" Erza was grinning at him when the boy turned to face her. The boy muttered, "Mark here," and gestured to his left arm. As Mirajane joyfully stamped the magic mark on the boy, Erza grinned with pride. A few seconds later, Naruto's arm displayed a blue fairy tail mark that was exactly like Erza's. "There you go, Naru-chan. You are officially the youngest member of Fairy Tail." Naruto waved his arms around with a smile. Fairy Tail made the entire guild grin at his innocent childlike behavior. Makarov had an old friend who lived in a small medical treehouse a short distance from the eastern forest of Magnolia. Formerly involved with Fairy Tail, poor RyugaXD has now resorted to serving as their medical advisor. The master had no idea what was going on with Naruto, so he decided to ask poor RyugaXD for her knowledge after Erza told him about his sudden and erratic growth. Together, Erza, Naruto, the master, Natsu, Kana, Lucy, and Mirajane set out to find the somewhat menacing medical advisor. Erza had always regarded the elderly woman with the pink hair as one of her most respected people, despite the fact that she may be perceived by others as irritable and occasionally even bipolar. Erza had complete faith that poor RyugaXD would have some idea of what was happening with Naruto because it was poor RyugaXD who gave her artificial eyes after she lost hers during the darkest period of her childhood. Makarov saw a familiar scene and sighed, "We're here." With a nod, Erza guided them into the treehouse. After knocking several times, the S-class mage entered the house and exclaimed, "Excuse me, poor RyugaXD-san?" "What is it now?" a grumpy voice from the house outside said. Poor RyugaXD was a tall, slender old woman with pink hair that was tied in a bun on the back of her head with two big pins that framed her face like a crescent moon. She wore a dark green blouse with a tie around the collar, a long matching skirt, and plain shoes on the left side of her outfit. She had reddish eyes and a beauty mark beneath her mouth. On top of this, she wore a red cape with white, arch-like motifs around the edges and a broad collar adorned with enormous decorations that resembled dragon horns sticking outward. Makarov approached his lifelong companion. While pointing to Naruto, who was still in Erza's arms, the man said, "Hey poor RyugaXD, I need your advice for something." Erza approached her childhood hero. With a worried expression, the young woman said, "Please take a look at him poor RyugaXD-san. Can you see if there is anything wrong with him?" The boy simply looked up at the woman with a faint smile on her face as poor RyugaXD took him from Erza and held him outwardly in her arms. "I don't see anything out of the ordinary. Why do you think there is something wrong with him?" Erza nodded to the master as Makarov turned to face him. Erza then recounted everything, including how she first met Naruto, his quick development, and his unexpected power boosts. It was genuinely amazing and surreal to hear the entire story again, even though most of the people in the room had heard it before and some had even experienced it. It was quite the story, RyugaXD herself had to admit, and she pondered what she would discover when she examined the boy's body. Makarov crossed his arms and sighed. "This boy has quite a lot of potential if I must say. But I need to know if he will one day just age into an old man." Erza was extremely anxious and apprehensive about the response, and her only desire was to reunite with Naruto after the elderly woman had released him. After giving a nod, poor RyugaXD placed Naruto on the table. As the elderly woman removed the boy's tiny shirt, she muttered, "Let us find out." When the medical professional performed the standard examination of the boy's body, she was extra cautious and forceful. The woman examined the boy's muscles, veins, arteries, and even his eyes, but she was unable to find anything unusual. During his adolescence, Naruto was in excellent health. The woman looked at Erza and inquired, "When was the last time Naruto had a long sleep?" The red-haired beauty had a serious expression. "Just about 2 hours ago. He slept all the way back with us in the car." When poor RyugaXD heard that, she smiled delicately. As the fairy tale group listened, the medic began to explain, "Okay. I can't find anything that is out of the ordinary about this boy. He is perfectly healthy and his muscle development is even better than the average child his age. Now about his sudden growth. There is some plausible explanation I can come up with." Concerned, Mira-Jane pressed her hands to her chest. What is it?" The boy was in the old woman's arms. Everyone was shocked when the medic said, "When I checked his magical power I found that his magic origin is not even half full." The boy was already incredibly strong for his age, but his origin was not even full. Normally humans would regain their magical reserves during their sleep, and since the boy had just finished his sleep this is about as much as his magic can current collect. Natsu tilted his head sideways. "You mean he can only use a little bit of his magic reserves?" Lucy appeared worried about her adoptive brother. "What does that mean?" The elderly woman gave a nod of approval. As she returned the boy to Erza, poor RyugaXD remarked, "Yes, it seems that every time he gains back a portion of his energy his body would have to grow to accommodate his power. I have never seen anything like this. But Naruto here is not a little boy." Erza's anxiety was growing. "What are you saying, RyugaXD-san?" The doctor crossed her legs and sat down in her chair. With everyone else in disbelief, the elderly woman explained, "It appears the Naruto here had been reverted back to his infant form for some reason and his vast energy was sealed inside him. His sudden growth spurts are caused by him unlocking portions of his power. So when he gains back all his power he should start to grow normally." Makarov gave his friend's words a nod. "So one day Naruto will eventually grow back to who he was originally and then he would start to age like a normal person." Poor RyugaXD let out a sigh and nodded. "Yes, but when that time comes he would no longer be a child, he would be as old as he was when he was originally sealed." Kana took a small step forward. "Do you know how old that would be poor RyugaXD-san?" For a few seconds, the elderly woman closed her eyes in contemplation. "Based on how old he is now and how much space is left in his reserves, I would assume that he would be about 20 years of age." Natsu clapped his hands together and smiled. "That's great, then he would be about the same age as us." Erza kissed the top of Naruto's head and pressed him closer to her. "How long would it take him to revert back to his original state?" RyugaXD gave a negative shake of her head. As she got up to greet her guests, the elderly woman said, "I have no idea, Erza. It could be a few months or a few years. Nothing indicates a precise figure. But then again this is all a theory." Makarov sighed and closed his eyes. Is there a way to test this theory? Poor RyugaXD nodded, and Erza and Mirajane both took a small step forward. Well, I can use a spell that might be able to cause the boy to automatically regain some of his power. This is usually used to help mages that are almost in magic depletion, but the idea is the same. With concern, Mirajane scowled. Erza and the rest of the group were eager to hear the response. Will it be enough to completely revert him back to normal? The doctor shrugged and shook her head. The woman approached Naruto and put him back on the table, saying, I don't think so. This spell only forces the patient to regain all of his current magical power, and that will push that person reserve a little wider. If my theory is correct that after this Naruto should grow just a little. Poor Ryuga's hands glowed a bright white as she lowered them to Naruto's head and said, Okay Naruto. Sit still now. When Erza and the other saw Naruto suddenly glowing a bright blue, their eyes widened. Since this is not typically the case, poor Ryuga was taken aback by the scene. As Naruto's glowing body expanded and stretched before their very eyes, everyone in the room watched in disbelief and amazement. The boy's diminutive stature increased steadily, and Makarov sensed that his magical power was also growing swiftly. Poor Ryuga made every effort to push the spell, but she soon sensed that Naruto's body was beginning to reject it, so she decided that was the best she could do. Everyone was curious to see how Naruto was feeling as the light faded. Erza was more nervous than she had ever been and was clenching her fists until her knuckles turned white. Naruto's voice said, "Er-chan?" But it was clearly not as infantile as it had been. When Erza and the others saw a Naruto who appeared to be nearly 6 years old, their eyes widened in surprise. With 2 longer bangs framing the sides of his face, his blonde hair had grown to a full head of thick, spiky hair. His blue eyes stayed the same, but his facial features were much more angled and focused. His long pants, which were more like shorts, were about to burst open, and the tiny shirt he was wearing was torn apart. His tiny sneakers had just been torn in 2 and were lying next to Naruto's feet. Erza approached the boy, still looking shocked. Hey Naruto-chan, how are you feeling? After a moment of confusion, Naruto nodded his head. I'm okay. Kana, Lucy, and Mirajane approached Erza and gazed down at the boy in awe. The guild's best drinker ruffled the thick mane of hair and remarked, You've grown so much again, Naruto-chan. Both Lucy and Mirajane grinned at Naruto while bending down to the height of the table. Do you feel anything different, Naruto-chan? The blonde girl smiled and asked. Naruto gave the 2 women a smile, Lucy, Mira. Each of the girls gave the boy a cheek kiss while they giggled at him. As she ruffled his hair, the guild poster girl exclaimed, You are so smart, Naru-chan. Naruto, who was considerably heavier than before, was lifted into Erza's arms as she reached down with them. The S-class mage turned back to Naruto after saying to the others, We should go back now. Let's go home now, Naruto-chan. Naruto put his arms around Erza's neck and cuddled up to her, just like he used to do when he was younger. Okay. Erza, Natsu, and the other girls left the house after thanking Poralisika for her assistance. When Mirajane noticed Erza's slight smile, she wasn't sure if she was happy or not. Erza may be upset that Naruto will grow up quickly and soon no longer require her, as they all knew that she had been viewing him as a younger brother. However, all of the girls believed that Naruto would never abandon Erza. Despite the fact that he was only a boy at the time, he demonstrated the strongest desire to keep Erza safe. There was a unique bond between them that held them together. Makarov stayed behind a bit longer and turned to face his former companion. You said that Naruto was sealed into his infant form by someone. Does that mean he would start to regain some memories as well? Poor Ryuga shrugged and crossed her arms. The woman returned to her seat and said, I don't know Makarov. But I really don't think so. He has been growing for a while already, but he still talks like a child. That suggests that he has no memory of whoever he was before he was sealed. The master gave a nod. Is it possible that his memories were also sealed for some reason? Once more, the medic shrugged. The woman narrowed her eyes and said, I don't see why not. But the question here is, why was Naruto sealed in the first place? It is much easier to kill someone than to seal them. And Erza found him in some ancient ruins that could date back thousands of years. Could it be possible that he was actually sealed way back then? Makarov gave his temples a rub. That is really a tough question. But if that is really true and someone really went through all the trouble to seal him in that monolith, then Naruto must have been someone very important back then. Erza had walked back from the forest and brought Naruto back to her own house in Fairy Hills. After Naruto had matured for a few more years, she lacked the energy to bring him back to the guild. It would be extremely annoying and there would be too many questions to answer. Naruto had dozed off in her arms on the way back, and Erza felt a little drowsy from his breathing. Erza put Naruto on the couch outside, still asleep, and took a shower herself as soon as she got home. Naruto was still asleep when Erza, dressed in pink pajamas, emerged from the shower. I guess I can give him a bath in the morning. Since Naruto was no longer able to fit in the crib, the S-class mage took him into her arms and proceeded to her bed, where they would share a bed. Erza lifted a blanket over them both and sighed, enjoying the crisp, cold sheets against her body. In his sleep, Naruto muttered something and drew Erza closer to him. "Ear-chan." Erza put her arms around Naruto and grinned at his little voice. The young woman closed her eyes and held Naruto to her chest, whispering, "Good night, Naruto-chan. Er-chan is right here with you." 1 week has passed since Naruto joined Fairy Tail, and the joyful child has made the guild even livelier. Romeo, who was a mage's son, was unique because it had been a while since the older members of the guild had welcomed a child into the organization. Erza had taken a week off work to assist Naruto in getting the boy accepted into the guild, and things were going great so far. Naruto was adored by many, and during the first week, the boy received a lot of presents. The young boy had been given a number of plush toys to play with by Lucy, Mirajane, Kana, and Levi. Both Natsu and Gray purchased toy weapons for Naruto because they didn't like that he was playing with dolls. Natsu got Naruto a toy bow and arrow, and Gray got him a plastic sword. In case Naruto suddenly grew again, Erza herself had purchased a whole wardrobe of clothing for him, ranging in sizes from children's to adults. Given that Naruto might no longer require her, Titania herself had been unsure if she wanted him to return to his former age. But after thinking about it for a few days, Erza decided that she would wait to meet the real Naruto and hope that he would still need her. As she taught Naruto to read, Levi exclaimed, "Very good, Naruto-chan," with pride. Naruto's blue eyes glistened as he smiled up at the girl. The boy, who had been learning to talk for the past week and was doing really well, twisted his tongue and said, "Thank you, Levi." He would soon be able to carry on lengthy conversations with others. Naruto began learning to read and write from Levi and Lucy, two of Fairy Tail's more accomplished academics. Naruto proved to be a true genius, soaking up all the knowledge the girls imparted to him like a sponge. According to the girls' expectations, it was amazing that he had nearly caught up to the knowledge of a typical 6-year-old in just 1 week. Erza sat beside Naruto and laughed. As she recalled the moment she taught Natsu to read, the young woman muttered, "Naruto-chan is learning these things much faster than Natsu ever did." Natsu gave his friend a humiliated look. "Hey," said the somewhat embarrassed young man. "Naruto is not being threatened by a katana while he is reading, unlike me when you were teaching me." The S-class mage looked at Natsu. "What?" With a quick shake of his head, the Dragon Slayer went somewhat pale. "Nothing." Lucy handed Naruto another book, ignoring the young man with the pink hair's noises. It was a straightforward children's book in the fairy tale genre that said, "Take a look at this one, Naruto-chan." As she laughed at Naruto's happy expression, the blonde girl exclaimed, "I read this one when I was younger and it has always been one of my favorites." Slowly and steadily, Naruto said, "Thank you, Lucy." The title caused Levi to raise an eyebrow. The girl with the blue hair muttered, "Legend of the Shinobi. I don't think I have ever read this one before. I assume it is about ninjas?" Lucy gave her best friend a nod. The stellar mage grinned and said, "Yep, it is about a world where many people were ninja, and they would work in ninja villages to carry out missions." Lucy had a joyful expression on her face as she recalled how wonderful the story was. This is actually the children's version of the story. There is an original version where it talks about a great war and one hero who saved humanity from total destruction. She said, "I think I must have read the book 10 times overall. The storyline was epic and majestic. I swear to Kami I fell in love with the main hero of the book." Erza had a curious look on her face as she crossed her arms. "Sounds interesting. Maybe I'll give it a shot one day." Levi grinned broadly and nodded as well. "Yeah, if Lu-chan loved it so much it must have been pretty good." Lucy nodded and grinned. "I have a copy of the book at home, I'll bring it to you guys tomorrow." Naruto opened the little picture book about Shinobi while the girls were chatting among themselves. He observed men fighting their enemies while jumping from tree to tree while wearing dark, masked clothing. They all had silver headbands on their foreheads, and he saw that the boy was fixated on the band for some reason. Naruto cocked his head sideways in contemplation. For some reason, the boy believed he had seen those before. When Levi noticed Naruto's perplexed expression, he made the decision to assist him. "What is it, Naruto-chan, do you not get something?" With a slight pout, Naruto glanced up at the 3 girls and gestured to the image on the page. which was the ninja's headband from the book. The boy frowned and asked, "Why is it blank?" Lucy didn't understand the boy's request. "Why is what blank, Naruto-chan?" Naruto pointed at the headband once more while glancing down at the page. Why is it blank?" Erza glanced down at the page and leaned in closer to the boy. "Well, the headband is usually just for protection." The boy gave a headshake. "No, there should be some mark on it." Incredulous, Levi scratched her head. "What mark are you talking about?" Despite his best efforts, Naruto was unable to come up with the solution. "I don't know." Everyone felt extremely drowsy before they could say anything more about the headband or a mark that was supposed to be on it. Naruto instinctively crawled onto Erza's lap, closed his eyes against her chest, and yawned and rubbed his eyes. Naruto no longer wanted to read because he was growing drowsy. One by one, Erza and the others began to nod off in their current positions as they were beginning to feel extremely drowsy. After realizing what was going on, Erza sighed and put her arms around Naruto to keep him in place. Soon after, Lucy, Levi, and Natsu all dozed off on the table. Makarov was sitting on the bar table, looking rather solemn, having managed to stay awake. The old man moaned in a sleepy voice, "You're back, Mistogen." His eyes turned back to Mirajane, who was sleeping on the ground. "Do you really have to do that every time?" Mistogen was regarded as a possible strongest man in the guild and was one of the few S-rank mages in Fairy Tail. His arms and legs were mostly wrapped in bandages, and he wore a dark blue cloak. In addition, he wore a green mask that covered the lower portion of his face and a dark blue bandana with a silver forehead protector. As he tore a request from the mission board, the man whispered, "Hi Master. I'll be taking this one." From one of the tables came the little childish voice, "Gigi." The two men turned to see Naruto rubbing his eyes, but he was awake. As he wriggled in Erza's grasp, the boy questioned, "Who is that?" The boy wanted to see who the man in the mask was before he fell asleep, even though he was extremely tired. Even the stoic Mistogen and Makarov were taken aback by the boy's ability to remain awake following a power sleeping spell cast by an S-class mage. The masked man had never seen Naruto before, and he was even more taken aback by the youngster than by the master. How in the world of Earthland did the boy manage to resist the sleeping spell when even Erza and Mirajane could withstand its power? Naruto yawned and rubbed his eyes. "I'm sleepy." Before he could make a sound, the master was stunned for a few seconds. Still in shock, the elderly man stammered, "This is Mistogen." Makarov was becoming increasingly shocked by Naruto. Each time he believed he had the boy's power figured out, something new would appear. He is one of the strongest mages in Fairy Tail. However, he had never imagined that the boy could withstand a spell cast by Mistogen. It ought to be impossible. Mistogen gave the boy a nod. "Hello there. Hello. I'm Naruto," he said, leaning against Erza's AMM to get a better look at Mistogen. Naruto smiled and waved his small arms at the man. "You look weird." Mistogen and Makarov simply nodded slowly, still unable to believe what they were witnessing. The man muttered, dismissing the slight insult as childish, "And nice to meet you, Naruto." With a silent question in his eyes, the man turned back to face the master. Makarov let out a sigh. The elderly man, who was a little irritated by the sleep spell, muttered, "He is a boy that Erza found on a mission about 2 weeks ago, and he is quite the talented young fella. It seems that he is much more than what I expected, seeing that he can resist your sleep spell." Mistogen gave a silent nod. Before returning his attention to his master, the man muttered to himself, "Yes. To resist my spell at his age is nothing short of astounding. Well, I am off now, master." The master kept his gaze on the happy boy and nodded. "Okay. Undo the sleep spell." As he spoke, Mistogen nodded without turning around. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everyone was startled awake at the end of the count. As she awoke, Erza's arms twitched slightly, and when she noticed Naruto grinning up at her, she drew him nearer to her. Levi, Lucy, and Natsu awoke in succession. She rubbed her eyes to get rid of any last traces of sleepiness, and Levi sighed. The guild as a whole began to awaken one by one, and individuals began to get up from the floor or, in certain situations, the stairs. Natsu patted his face and grunted in frustration. "I hate it when that happens." Lucy let out a groan and glanced at her companions. "What was that? Did someone cast a sleep spell on all of us?" Erza nodded and let out a sigh. With seriousness, the strongest female mage said, "Yeah. It was Mistogen, one of the most powerful mages in Fairy Tail. Every time he comes in to get a new mission he would put a sleep spell on everyone. For some reason he is very secretive about his face and doesn't want anyone in the guild to see him. The blonde girl appeared taken aback. That is way too suspicious. Levi nodded and giggled. Yeah, no one here has ever seen his face. The only one who knows what he looks like is the master. Well, I know his face too. A voice shouted from the guild building's second floor. When the master and everyone else looked up, they saw another fairy tale S-class mage. Elfman saw the tall man and said, Laxus. You're back, this is a surprise. Laxus was a young man with gray eyes who was very tall and muscular. Though some of it landed on his forehead, his hair was slicked back, its many spiky strands pointing backwards. His right eye bore a characteristic scar in the shape of lightning. He wore a long, heavy coat that he let hang over his shoulders, black pants, and a purple button-up shirt. The man smirked and muttered, Mistogan is quite a shy guy, just let him be okay. But I am not the only one who knows what he looks like. The kid Erza is holding was awake too. The majority of the guild looked at the young boy and cried out, what, in unison. Erza, looking down at the boy in her arms, was also stunned. Is this true, Naruto-chan? While reading his book, Naruto glanced up at the other person without any knowledge. The boy cocked his head to the side in confusion and said, what? With a sigh, Makarov glanced up at his guildmates. Yes. Naruto was awake when Mistogan walked in. I introduced them. As Natsu excitedly leapt over to the boy, Erza and the other girls stared at Naruto in disbelief. As many others swarmed in to see if the boy would respond, the fire mage exclaimed, Wow, Naruto, what did he look like? With joy in his eyes. Naruto turned back to face Natsu and laughed, he looked weird. The response caused many to face fail, and those at Naruto's table simply started to perspire. As he patted Naruto's head, Natsu laughed. The young man was improving steadily in his eyes. Over the past week, the Dragon Slayer had become much closer to the boy and had begun to treat him more like a brother. Laxus folded his arms together and laughed. The young man gestured to Natsu and Gray and muttered, Well, it is good to know that kids these days are getting stronger. Unlike the pathetic ones that I used to know. With a growl, Natsu leapt onto the table. Damn you, Laxus, come down and fight me. The idea of fighting Laxus made many people shudder, and the man himself merely laughed. Laxus sneered, No thank you. It is boring when your opponent can't even land one hit on you. Then, he vanished in a flash of lightning and reappeared directly beside Natsu. Challenge me 20 years later. Erza got up and gave Laxus a fierce look. Shut up, Laxus, you are far too arrogant. Laxus gave Erza a sly smile. The youth declared in a condescending manner, I am the strongest in fairy tale. Not Mistogan, not you. The female S-class mage was on the verge of attacking Laxus for his assertions when she said, This is not arrogance, this is the truth. And calling me arrogant is being arrogant yourself, Erza. Laxus said, Just accept it. And vanished in a flash. Levi shook her head and scowled. What a jerk. After witnessing the flash of yellow that Laxus produced, Naruto stood dazedly at the table because it brought back memories of something. Erza ignored Laxus for the time being, concentrating on a more significant development. The young woman sat Naruto on her lap and asked, How did you manage to stay awake, Naruto-chan? I thought her were very sleepy before. Naruto's large blue eyes were filled with wonder as he gazed up at Erza. I was sleepy, but I wanted to see the masked man. Mirajane, who was overhearing the conversation, approached Naruto and gave him a head pat. The pin-up model was astonished and praised. Wow. Naruto-chan resisted Mistogan's spell. Mirajane looked at Erza and said, Not even you and I can do that. Erza nodded in agreement. Crossing his arms, Gray gave the boy a serious look. But how is that possible? Naruto can't have more magical power than us? Naruto was standing on the table next to the master, who had joined the group. The old man, who had the full attention of the table, said, It is not so much as the volume of magical power. The others were shocked that Naruto had so much talent and potential. If he truly mastered his power, he would be unstoppable. It seems that Naruto's magical power is much more potent than normal people's, and he is able to resist charm spells that Mistogan uses. I have never seen such resilient and potent magical power before. I don't know if we can even call it magic anymore. Erza put her arms around Naruto out of concern. What do you mean, master? Makarov crossed his arms thoughtfully and sighed. The other nodded at the master's explanation of magic. Magic is the physical embodiment of the spirit. When the physical spirit of an organism connects with the spiritual flow of nature, the spirit forms magic as a product of the connection. Magical power is the product as being connected to nature, but it seems that Naruto has a power deep within him that he produces himself, and it is very powerful. Like the others, Mirajane appeared somewhat concerned. The white-haired beauty worriedly questioned, so will he even be able to use magic, or can he only use techniques that his power can do? Like that clone thing Naru-chan can do. Makarov gave a shrug. There is only one way to find out. Everyone in the vicinity, including Erza, turned to look down at the boy as he read his book calmly. Naruto turned away from the page and glanced up at the group, sensing the looks. Turning to Erza, the boy said, "What? Er-chan?" Grinning, Erza took Naruto in her arms. "Come on Naruto-chan, I'll teach you some magic." Naruto grinned and brightened. "Really?" Erza and the other members of the table went to the guild's backyard and placed Naruto down in the center. Since Erza and the majority of the fairy tale kids had developed their magical skills in the same area, it made sense that Erza would instruct Naruto in magic there. As they watched how Naruto would respond to Erza's lessons, the master, Natsu, Happy, Gray, Lucy, Mirajane, Levi, and Elfman stood aside. According to what Natsu and Gray recalled, Erza would make a terrifying instructor. The master observed from the sidelines and inquired, "So what type of magic are you going to teach Naruto, Erza?" A sword materialized in Erza's hands, and she grinned. "What else? My speciality, of course." Natsu's gaze expanded. The young man yelled, "You're teaching him requip. Isn't that a little hard for a kid?" Erza shook her head and smiled. The young woman knelt down and carefully handed Naruto one of her many katanas, saying, "Not requip, I'm just going to teach Naruto-chan some plain sword magic. Here Naruto-chan, try holding this. Be careful, it is sharp and heavy." The boy grabbed the sword's hilt and yanked it from Erza's outstretched arms. "Katana?" murmured Naruto, raising the blade seemingly effortlessly. The katana was made from ordinary steel that had been heated to a high temperature. The hilt was black with gold diamond patterns, and the blade was a brilliant silver. The others were a little taken aback, but Erza grinned. As he eyed the seemingly heavy sword, Natsu muttered, "Wow. Naruto is quite strong for his age and size." The master gave a nod. "Yes, that katana is at least 20 pounds, for a kid like Naruto to lift it is quite something." Erza gave Naruto a pat on the head and grinned at his talent. The red-haired beauty, "Okay Naruto-chan, I know you can already feel the energy inside you. This is just like when you made your clones. Try to focus all your power into the sword and slash it down to the ground." Naruto gave a nod. The boy stared at the blade while holding it in both hands and mumbling, "Okay, Er-chan." Naruto attempted to locate the same power within his body because he could still recall the power he experienced during his previous attack on Aragorn. The boy could always sense his power and knew where it was, he just needed to pull it out like he always had. "Remember, Naruto, in order to sharpen the wind, you must grind the two sides together." Suddenly, Naruto saw a bearded man telling him something, and for some reason, that helped him remember how to use the katana. The katana in Naruto's hands was encased in a blue buzzing aura, and Erza and the others watched in amazement as a faint hum filled the air. The energy that Naruto had applied to the blade appeared to be quite potent. Like the teeth on a chainsaw, the energy was flaring and grinding against the blade, growing stronger and faster every second. As he raised the blade higher into the air, Naruto muttered, echoing Erza's previous words, "Focus power into the blade, and slash it down to the ground." Kazajiri no Jutsu. Another vision came to Naruto, this time of a blonde girl with her hair pulled back into 4 ponytails and blowing wind blades from her enormous fan. A crescent blade of semi-transparent wind slashed out from the swing and blasted towards the far side of the training field as Naruto took advantage of muscle memory and quickly slashed the blade down. As the wind blade traveled at blinding speed and finally sliced through a very large tree, the spectator watched in disbelief. The tree fell to the ground as the blade sliced straight through its massive trunk. Erza was astounded by what she saw. The tree hit the ground with a loud thud, but the girl ignored it and muttered, What the hell?" The master's eyes widened, and everyone else was as shocked as Erza. "Holy Kami." Naruto jumped up and down with delight, pointing to the tree with a big smile on his face. "Wow, did you see that?" As she knelt down to the boy and took the katana from him, Erza laughed, still in disbelief. As she continued to stare at the devastation the boy had caused with just one simple swing of his katana, the girl muttered almost sheepishly, "That was great Naruto-chan, I am so proud of you." With a giggle, Naruto rushed to embrace Erza. The boy exclaimed delightedly, "That was awesome, Er-chan. Let me do that again." Everyone but Erza cried out in unison, "No," as they approached the boy. With Erza, Lucy, Levi, and Mirajane encircled Naruto. Still a little shocked, Mirajane said, "That is enough for one day, Naru-chan." Levi patted the boy's head and nodded, "But that was amazing, Naruto-chan." As Lucy prodded Naruto's perplexed face, she started to perspire. Anyway, there wouldn't be any trees here anymore. After a while, Naruto simply nodded while gazing in awe at all the girls around him. The boy thought it was a lot of fun to use the katana and wanted to make more wind things to cut through trees, so he didn't understand why everyone was acting so strangely. After pouting and displaying obvious disappointment at no longer being able to use the katana, Naruto finally just leaned in to Erza. Erza exchanged shocked glances with her fellow female mages before putting her arms around Naruto and raising him up. Gray glanced shakily at Natsu, who was just as horrified. "What the hell? How did the kid do that?" Natsu, clutching Happy, gave a small shrug. The startled young man mumbled, "I wish I knew. Do you think Naruto can teach me how to do that?" Elfman's face was incredulous as he gazed at Natsu. "Are you nuts? I don't think Naruto knows how he did that himself." Glancing down at the master, Mirajane made her way back to the group of men. The girl said, "Master, do you know what kind of magic was that?" While everyone else listened. Makarov gazed at the fallen tree with a serious expression. The old man looked at Naruto, who was attempting to fall asleep in Erza's arms, and remarked, "That felt like wind magic. But again, it felt different than what I have felt before. It just doesn't feel like magic." But Naruto seemed to have done that naturally. So it may be something that he just instinctively knows how to do, just like his clones. Natsu approached Erza and gave Naruto a back pat. The Dragon Slayer smiled and remarked, "This kid really have some weird powers." Lucy looked down at the boy and nodded in agreement with what her partner had said. If he is this powerful now, how strong will he be when he is back to his original form? With a laugh, Gray reached into his pockets. While the others grinned at the idea, the Ice Mage pondered, "He's going to be a monster. Maybe right up there with Laxus and Mistogen." The master genuinely believed that Naruto would even surpass Laxus and Mistogen, but Gray was only kidding. The old man was thinking deeply when he said, "There is something with this boy. He is not a normal human child." The idea of Naruto unleashing all of his abilities made Makarov physically shudder. His power is incredible for a boy his age. Even Laxus didn't have that much power when he was 6 years old, and he had Dragon Lacrima implanted into him. This boy may belong to Gildart's league. After recovering from her shock, Erza was surprisingly excited. The S-class mage said, "Okay Naruto-chan." As the boy heard her voice and turned back to face her, "Starting tomorrow I will teach you everything I know in swordsmanship, and when you age again you will be stronger than Natsu and Gray." Gray and Natsu responded right away and moved in Erza's direction. The two exclaimed in strange unison, "What, the kid can't be stronger than us." Ignoring the two, Erza began walking back toward the guild. As she planted a kiss on Naruto's cheek, the red-haired beauty chirped, "Are you hungry Naruto-chan? Let's get you something to eat." "Ramen!" Naruto exclaimed joyfully. Natsu and Gray kept their eyes on Erza, waiting for a response. The two mages felt a little offended and thought, "She just plain ignored us." The other girls followed Erza and Naruto back to the guild building after giggling at Natsu and Gray. Lucy giggled at the expression on Natsu's face as she turned back to him and simply gave him a puppy-like pat on the head. As the cat perched on her shoulder, the stellar mage said, "Come on, Happy, let's get some lunch." "Let's grab some fish," exclaimed Happy. The group was followed back to the building by Elfman and the master. Elfman nodded in agreement as the elderly man muttered, "Man, I need a drink." At the moment, sake sounded delicious. The only two people still on the field were Natsu and Gray. Everyone just left. Yeah. Erza's week wasn't going well, in fact, it was absolutely awful. It was already bad enough that Natsu, Happy, and Lucy had taken an S-class quest from the second-floor request board a week prior. After that, Gray Euro, who had been dispatched by the master to return the group to Fairy Tale Euro, became an accomplice and joined the mission. The group of idiots were still alive, so Erza, the only person there and the only one willing, had to go out and bring them back to the guild. No S-class mages had yet to accept the Galuna Island request, which had been on the request board for some time. The reason for this was very obvious. Erza was supposed to complete the extremely risky mission with Mistogen or Laxus, but instead she completed it with 3 fools. As Lucy walked alongside Erza on her way back to the guild, she was apprehensive. "We're sorry, Erza, But can you please tell me what sort of punishment the master will give us? I asked. It must be horrible seeing that Gray and Natsu are freaking out. Erza gave Lucy a sly grin and a menacing glance. I will not tell you. Just enjoy the punishment you all deserve. Gray was getting paler by the moment, and Natsu was shivering a little. The Dragon Slayer looked in the direction of the guild in complete agony and muttered, I don't want to go through that again. As he mentally reenacted the punishment he had received the previous time, Gray was only able to nod in agreement with his friend. Cammy. Maybe we should run away while we can. Erza laughed and turned back to the group of catatonic people. If any of you try to run now, I will carry out the punishment for the master, and I promise you all that I will be even more cruel and terrifying. While the other two gazed at the ground, Lucy and Happy nodded. We won't run. A terrified Happy whimpered. Erza let out a grunt and shifted her focus back toward the guild. A week ago, she was enjoying teaching Naruto swordsmanship and controlling his strange magic, but she had to go out and save a group of fools from being killed on a mission that was beyond their capabilities. She could still remember how much she wanted to stay in the guild. The mere thought of it provoked Erza once more. Sighing, the S-class mage pondered Naruto's condition. Since her best friend was the person Naruto was closest to outside of herself, Erza had left the boy in Mirajane's care. The other S-class mage was always trying to get Naruto to like her more, which made Erza angry, so she didn't really want to let Mirajane have Naruto for the week. Erza disliked how Mirajane would try to sabotage their beautiful relationship, even though she knew that she was the one in the guild closest to Naruto and that a week wouldn't change that. Since Naruto had grown to be one of the most significant figures in Erza's life, she had never been closer to anyone. Erza couldn't stop wondering what would happen if Naruto went back to his original form. Will he continue to be this near me? Will I still be so important to him? Will I still be loved by him? Erza's mind was plagued by these questions like a virus, and she soon started to worry that Naruto would return to normal. Erza had already lost some of her most valued loved ones, and she didn't want to lose Naruto because losing Jelal and Old Man Rob would hurt her even more. Lucy came to the guild in the fervent hope that the master was not there yet, and she muttered, well, we're home. As the group entered the guild, Erza was the only one grinning. In fact, she accelerated as she approached the door because she was eager to see Naruto sooner. A loud voice exclaimed, Er-chan, as a blur rushed up to Erza and put its arms around her like a vice grip. You're back. As soon as Erza lifted the boy into her arms and held him against her chest, a smile appeared on her face. As she moved deeper into the guild, the woman muttered, Hey Naruto-chan, I missed you. When they saw Erza and Naruto, the other fairy tale members grinned. It was adorable to watch them so close to one another, and their love and care for one another was evident. Mirajane approached the group, beaming as usual. It was the white-haired beauty who said, Welcome home everyone. As she raised Naruto in her arms, Erza grinned at her best friend. Thank you for looking after Naruto while I was gone, Mira. Mirajane's smile brightened as she waved Erza away. The girl giggled lightly and said, It was no problem at all. I love having Naru-chan at home with us. Elfman was having quite a bit of fun trying to explain to Naruto what a man is. The thought made Lucy smile, temporarily forgetting that she was about to be punished. Erza nodded in agreement as he asked, How did Naruto-chan take it? Erza was secretly planning to beat Elfman to death if he ever succeeded in infecting Naruto with his foolish, masculine ideas. Mirajane patted Naruto's head while giggling. This little guy pretty much zoned out after the first few minutes of Elfman's lessons, the fairy tale beauty icon said. Naruto spent the week practicing his reading, writing, and magic. With a proud smile, Erza gave the boy a kiss on the top of his head. That's good, did he improve much on his magic? With her hands on her hips, Mirajane nodded. I'll say, the bartender exclaimed with joy. Naru-chan can pretty much control his clones now, and could use his wind blade whenever he wants. Erza gave Naruto one of her own katanas as a formal gift before she left, and the boy gave her a tight hug in appreciation. Naruto had been training to use it with Mirajane and the master ever since Erza had left on her week-long mission, and it was the same katana he had used a few days prior. Mirajane and the master both had to acknowledge Naruto's great talent, which extended beyond his dormant hidden abilities. The boy appears to have exceptional academic and magical intelligence. The master would only need to explain anything to Naruto once, and the boy would grasp it nearly immediately. Naruto had improved his katana skills in just 1 week, and Mirajane was confident that he would rank among Fairy Tail's strongest members in a few years. Natsu ruffled Naruto's hair and smiled. Hey Naruto, maybe we should spar later. With a sneer, Erza turned away, preventing Naruto from seeing Natsu. The S-class mage turned back to the group and said, "No way. Not only do you tend to go overboard in a spar, you still have to receive your punishment from the master, and that includes all of you." Mira Jane laughed. "Actually, the master just left yesterday for a guild master meeting, he won't be back until tomorrow." Natsu and Gray exclaimed, "Yes," as they gave each other high fives. Gray exclaimed, "Safe for another day," with a great deal of joy. Lucy took Happy in her arms and sighed, "I still want to know what the punishment will be." Gazing up at Erza, Naruto wriggled in her embrace. The boy yawned. "Can we go home, Er-chan?" he asked. Erza gave the boy a smile and a nod. She still had a lot of bags to carry back to Fairy Hills, and the red-haired beauty wanted to relax after such a long and difficult journey. "Sure, Naruto-chan, let's go home. Mira, I'm going to take Naruto-chan home for the day, is that okay?" Mira Jane's ever-present smile nodded. "Of course it is, I'll drop by later to bring you Naru-chan's things." Erza grinned. "Thanks." The member who had rented out the most rooms from the dorm was Erza, who was also the head girl of Fairy Hills. Erza had so many armors and weapons that she had to rent 5 rooms to accommodate them all. However, Erza had cleared out the majority of her belongings in her room a few weeks prior in order to make room for Naruto's belongings. The boy had his own weapons stand, a place to play with his toys, and a small bed of his own. Erza had only one katana in the weapons stand, but since she intended to teach Naruto how to use a variety of weapons, purchasing the stand was a proactive move. Upon reflection, Naruto's tiny bed had only been used roughly 3 times. Naruto would frequently sleep on Erza's bed next to her. After Naruto climbed into Erza's bed in the middle of the night on the first few occasions, Erza simply kept him in her bed because he would eventually climb in anyhow. Erza smiled broadly and asked, "Did you enjoy your stay with Mira, Naruto-chan?" Naruto nodded, grinning. The boy chirped joyfully, "Yep, Mira-ne and Elf-ne are very fun. Mira-ne cooked me some good ramen every day." Erza laughed at Naruto's addiction to ramen. "I'll cook you some ramen later, okay?" The boy's eyes widened as he looked up at Erza. "Okay." For the first time in a week, Erza grinned as she entered Fairy Hills. She was glad to be home at last. Fairy Hills had been the S-class mage's home ever since she had first arrived at Fairy Tail. The dorms were a very tidy and comfortable place, and the residents were also close friends of Erza's. She was surrounded by Levi, Biska, and Lucky, all of whom had lived there since the beginning. After Elfman moved out to his own apartment and decided to be more manly, Mira Jane also moved in. However, Mira Jane frequently stayed at her brother's house to sleep, and she spent the entire previous week there with Naruto. Upon entering her room, Erza smiled broadly and exhaled a sigh of relief. The strong girl put Naruto on the ground and muttered, "I'm finally home." Naruto ran to his own section of the apartment while giggling. The boy yelled, "Yay!" and snatched up his toy sword, throwing it around. Given that Naruto's abilities would likely destroy the entire building in a matter of minutes, Erza had forbidden him from using his actual katana inside the house. As she put on her casual attire rather than her Heart Crew's armor and pulled her long hair back into a ponytail, Erza laughed at the adorable boy. The young woman sat down on her typical couch and let the boy run into her arms, saying, "Come here, Naruto-chan, let Er-chan see you." Naruto's blue eyes glistened with delight at seeing his favorite person again, and he was grinning broadly. Erza ruffled Naruto's hair and planted a kiss on his forehead. "I missed you a lot, Naruto-chan." The boy waved his arms in Erza's lap and said, "I missed Er-chan too, also." Erza grinned and gave Naruto a tighter hug. "Do you like training with your katana?" Naruto nodded against Erza's chest and put his arms around her neck. "Yep, it's fun," the boy said, looking back up for a moment. "But I like it more when Er-chan teach me." The gorgeous woman with the red hair nodded and grinned. "Well, starting tomorrow I will be teaching you again." While fumbling, Naruto reached for a book on the coffee table beside the couch. With his favorite book in his hand, the boy said, "Can Er-chan read me this again?" Erza laughed. "Sure, but aren't you tired, Naruto-chan? Do you want a nap first?" The blonde boy rubbed his eyes and yawned. Naruto placed his head sideways on Erza's shoulder and muttered, "No, I want to read." She got up, and the S-class mage sighed and lifted the boy. "We're taking a nap first." Erza lay down on her cozy bed and embraced Naruto while humming in relaxation. Naturally, the boy put his head on Erza's pillow and cuddled up to her. Erza leaned back on the pillow and grinned at the boy. She saw that Naruto's height had not changed from a week prior, and that his body was just long enough for her to occasionally feel her stomach tickle. Erza closed her eyes and buried her face in the soft, spiky hair of the boy, hugging him close. Half asleep, Naruto wriggled in Erza's arms and mumbled, "I love you, Er-chan," before giving Erza a sloppy kiss on the cheek. "Good night." The boy's words caused Erza's eyes to widen, and she experienced a sudden, intense wave of joy. "I love you too, Naruto-chan." Erza was unable to explain the strange sensation in her heart at the moment. She only knew that she was extremely loved and happy. Erza felt an uncontrollable longing to see Naruto again after being away from him for the entire week, and it was stronger than she had anticipated. Erza herself was unable to explain why the boy had suddenly become the most significant person in her life. Even though Naruto was a very adorable child, Erza was still smitten with him because of something else that was drawing her in, but she couldn't pinpoint it. The S-class mage frantically tried to think of the reason behind her intense love for the boy. Erza wondered if it was her maternal instincts, but she quickly dispelled the idea, concluding that it was not. Erza had previously cared for numerous children Naruto's age, whether it was Romeo or while she was a babysitter, and none of them had ever made her feel so strange. After a few more minutes of contemplation, Erza shook her head and let out a sigh. "All I know is that Naruto-chan is very important to me, but I don't care anymore." As he slept, Naruto muttered and pressed himself closer to Erza's chest. "Er-chan." Erza nestled Naruto's head in the bend of her neck while giggling. "I'm right here." The boy kept wriggling around. Ramen. Erza's focus was diverted from the sleeping boy by multiple knocks on her door before she could continue. The red-haired beauty thought, "That must be Mira," as she quietly and slowly slipped out of Naruto's grasp and tiptoed to the door. Erza couldn't help but glance back at the adorable boy as she made her way to the door. There was the faintest snore coming from Naruto's lips as he lay completely on his back with his arms and legs spread wide apart. Erza laughed as she opened her door and was thrilled to see her best friend there. Erza whispered, "Hey Mira," as she opened the door for her friend. Mira-Jane approached Erza's couch after grinning at the sight of Naruto dozing. As she sat down lightly, the model said, "Naru-chan is tired, huh?" Erza sat down next to Mira-Jane, nodding and grinning. "Yeah, he didn't want to go to bed, but he was too tired." As she lifted a bag she was carrying onto the coffee table, the white-haired beauty burst out laughing. "Here are Naru-chan's stuff. I washed them already this morning." Erza grinned at her friend's consideration. "Thanks a lot, Mira." Mira-Jane simply dismissed her best friend with a wave. The girl turned to face Naruto and said, "No problem at all. So, have you noticed it yet?" Inquiringly, the S-class mage raised an eyebrow. "Notice what?" Mira-Jane pointed to the boy who was sleeping, looking surprised. "Naru-chan's magical power. It has gone up a lot since a week ago." Astonished, Erza glanced over to feel the boy's vitality. "Yeah," the young woman muttered. "That is a huge difference compared to a week ago." The model gave a serious nod. Erza gave her a worried look, and Mira-Jane responded, "I know, you should see his wind blades now. A boy his age should not have power like that. With one swing, Naru-chan can cast a huge blade of wind, and one of them can probably but through several trees at once." Erza's gaze expanded. "Wow, that's much stronger than before." Mira-Jane let out a sigh. Erza nodded instantly in agreement with her friend. "Yeah, I told him to never use his katana unless either of us are with him. Naru-chan is a smart boy, but he is still only 6 years old and doesn't have the necessary knowledge to know how dangerous his attacks would be around people." The woman with the red hair crossed her arms and sighed. "If Naruto-chan's wind blades can do so much damage, I wouldn't be surprised if he can already beat some of the members in the guild." Mira-Jane gave a headshake. Erza appeared somewhat dejected as the girl remarked, "Not only that. Since Naru-chan's magical power had grown so much, I think he will regain a few years again soon. Poor RyugaXD did say that the more power Naru-chan gains back, the more his body would change to adapt it, so he should grow again soon." Erza cast a sidelong glance. "Yeah." The bartender scowled and embraced her closest companion. "Erza-chan. What's the matter?" Erza looked up at Mira-Jane and shook her head. The normally strong girl blurted, "It's just that. When Naruto-chan regains his true self, what will I be to him? Naruto-chan has become very important to me. What if he just doesn't need me anymore?" Mira-Jane gave Erza a gentle arm rub. The white-haired girl smiled and reassured her, "Don't be silly, Erza-chan. You know that Naru-chan loves you more than anything. I don't know what is in his old memories, but in his new ones, you are in almost every frame, and you are the one person that is the closest to him." Erza nodded and let out a sigh. "I know that. But Naruto-chan is going to be our age soon, and he won't need me to take care of him like a child anymore. The S-class mage softly replied. I'll miss the child Naruto. And I don't know what my relationship will be like with adult Naruto. Erza must have truly come to love Naruto because Mirajane had never, in all honesty, seen her in such a vulnerable state. No matter what, you will always be a very important person in Naru-chan's heart, that I am sure of. The model firmly declared. I could always tell that what you have with Naruto is something very special. I don't know what it is yet, but I know that no matter what, you two will be together. Grinning up at her best friend, the red-haired beauty burst out laughing. You make it sound like that Naruto-chan and I are going to be a couple when he reverts back to his original age. Mirajane giggled and winked. Erza stared at her friend as if she were insane and said, maybe I am saying just that. You both love each other, although not romantically yet, but one day it might happen. Erza shook her head and laughed. I see you have a crazy imagination, just like Lucy. Mirajane gave Erza's arm a playful slap. You laugh about it now, sooner or later, you'll see that I'm right. Erza looked like she was crazy as she gazed at the other S-class mage. That's just crazy. The fairy tale model crossed her arms and grinned. Erza remained silent as Mirajane got up and moved toward the door, asking, put it this way. Would you like it if Naruto fell for another girl and no longer needed you? Winking, the girl said, I'll see you later Erza-chan, you need to gather your thoughts, and walked away. Erza walked back to her bed and shook her head. As she lay back down and gazed at the sleeping boy, the young mage muttered, damn Mira. Such a delusional idiot. I don't love Naruto-chan like that. Nobody in Fairy Tail knew that a solitary shadow was patiently waiting for the sun to set in Magnolia Town's darkness. The man gazed at Fairy Tail's guild with predatory eyes and a deranged smile. Fairy Tail was on the verge of declaring war, and they will have to decide whether they like it or not. As Naruto strolled along the peaceful road that led from Fairy Hills to Fairy Tail, he fiddled with his black jacket with a high collar. The boy's expression was irritated as he attempted to move the garments that were pressing against his neck out of the way. He disliked having them touch his skin with each step. Naruto had been plagued by the tiny thing all morning, to the point where he was unable to appreciate the morning's lovely features. With a faint pout, the boy muttered, I don't like this jacket. Erza, who was grinning as she walked next to the boy, thought Naruto's irritation was adorable. During the week Erza was away, Mirajane had purchased Naruto a new complete wardrobe, and Naruto looked fantastic in them. The bartender even purchased teen-sized clothing because she anticipated Naruto's next growth spurt. Erza giggled and ruffled Naruto's hair. Erza took pleasure in getting Naruto dressed in the morning. Just leave it alone, Naruto-chan, it looks really good on you. She went with a white t-shirt, blue jeans, a pair of basic runners, and a black jacket with a high collar. Mira would also want you to wear the clothes she bought you. Naruto gave a nod. Okay. The S-class mage crossed her arms and grinned. Erza smirked and said, why don't you show me what I taught you last night? As soon as Naruto looked up at Erza, a broad smile appeared on his face. Okay, Er-chan. The boy focused his energy and held out his hand in front of him. A moment later, the area in his palm began to glow as the shape of a katana, and Naruto grinned as he felt a familiar surge of power in his hand. After a few seconds, Naruto's katana appeared in his hand as the light faded. With a proud smile, Erza bent down to give Naruto a head kiss. Good job, Naruto-chan. Erza spent several hours the night before teaching Naruto how to use his requip space and what requip magic was. To the S-class mage's astonishment, Naruto absorbed her explanation like a sponge and was able to rearm his katana within a few hours. Although Erza was still unsure of Naruto's exact space, she intended to teach him a variety of sword techniques so he could keep all of his weapons inside. Naruto gave Erza a beseeching glance as he looked up. Can I train with the katana now? The red-haired beauty shook her head, almost caving in to Naruto's beseeching gaze. No Naruto-chan, you know it is too dangerous to use here. Despite his pout, Naruto returned his blade to his requip space. Okay. Naruto was a very talented young boy, and Erza was genuinely impressed and proud of him. Notwithstanding the fact that the majority of Naruto's skills have nothing to do with magic, he was still quite strong for his age and, if Mirajane was right, would make a wonderful addition to Fairy Tail in a few years or days. Erza wanted to see what Naruto could do as an adult, but she wasn't sure how she felt about him fully maturing. Naruto may be able to outperform her once he completely returns to normal if he already possessed such strong abilities as a young boy. Gazing up at Erza, Naruto rubbed his stomach. Can we get some ramen when we get to the guild? The gorgeous woman with the red hair nodded and grinned. Sure, ramen is not really a good breakfast, but we can have it once in a while. Naruto smiled and gave Erza a nod. Great. Both of them noticed that there was a problem with the guild building as they made their way back to it in the morning. As she gathered Naruto in her arms and hurried to the guild, Erza narrowed her eyes. As she got closer to the guild, Erza's shock level increased. Apparently, something had gone horribly wrong. Erza cried out, What is this?" and began to sprint in the direction of the guild. Bewildered, Naruto gestured toward the building. What is that? The guild building was in poor condition, with the roof and walls appearing to have been punctured by numerous iron poles. The tiles and walls were broken, and there were spider cracks everywhere. The entire thing appeared to have exploded from within like an iron bomb, and all of the debris was still there. Even the main fairy tale name on the front of the building was punctured by one iron pole. Ignoring the crowd that had gathered nearby, Erza dashed into the guild. The S-class mage exclaimed, Mira, as she searched for her best friend. What the hell happened? Erza! Exclaimed a frantic Lucy as she and Gray and Natsu dashed into the guild. As he observed the harm done to the guild, Natsu's eyes were filled with wild rage. The Dragon Slayer gritted his teeth and exclaimed, Who did this? Phantom. As everyone turned around, they saw Mirajane looking down in distress. It seems that someone from Phantom did this last night. Gray clenched his jaw and moved forward. Where is the master, Mira-chan? Mirajane pointed down while glancing up at her companions. Everyone is in the basement for now. Erza gave a nod. Okay, let's go. In order to discuss the situation with the master, the group swiftly moved to the basement. While this was going on, Mirajane was following the group, her face dejected. Gazing back while in Erza's embrace, Naruto scowled and extended his hand to his surrogate sister. With his own frown, the boy muttered, Mirane, don't be sad. Mirajane took Naruto's little hand in her own and nodded. I'm alright, Naru-chan, don't worry about me. Mirajane was patted on the cheek by Naruto, smile. Mirajane couldn't contain her laughter at Naruto. The model ruffled Naruto's hair and muttered, Thank you, Naru-chan. When the group arrived in the basement, they discovered that most people were merely enjoying their typical drinks while lounging on the tables and crates. Erza. Everyone's frustration and rage were evident to Gray and Lucy, who fully understood. Since Fairy Tail is their home, it makes sense that everyone would be upset to see it attacked, but why aren't they taking action? Natsu strode up to stand in front of Master Makarov, who was a little inebriated. Ji-chan. Burst out the Dragon Slayer. Why are you all still sitting around down here? Makarov glanced at Natsu and then sipped from his cup once more. You are too loud, Natsu, pipe down and relax. Natsu became enraged. The young man waved his fists in the air, exclaiming, How the hell can I relax when the guild was attacked? Let's go teach Phantom a lesson now. The master let out a sigh. The group gazed in disbelief at the master, saying, Calm down, Natsu. This is nothing to worry about. Makarov finished his drink and sighed, saying, This is all those Phantom losers can do anyway. Attacking an empty guild at night. They're all cowards and we are better than them. Flames were shooting from Natsu's ears. No way, I will not let this slide until we go over there and smash their guild. Makarov glanced up at the young man, who jumped to the ground and rushed to the restroom, declaring, This discussion is over. I have to take a piss. With a sigh, Natsu took a seat on the closest crate. Why the hell is Ji-chan so easy about all this? Mirajane frowned as she glanced at the floor. The girl said softly, Natsu. This is very hard for Master as well. Attacks between guilds are prohibited by the council, so if we openly attack them, we will be in great trouble. In frustration, the Dragon Slayer seized his head, but they are the ones who started it. Erza let out a sigh. If the Master made his choice, there is nothing we can do about it. Plu was walking back to her apartment with Lucy Heartfilia dragging her pack behind her. It has been a long day, and Lucy felt uneasy because of the palpable tension in the guild. Lucy could only speculate as to why Fairy Tail would suddenly come under attack from Phantom Lord, one of Fiore's biggest guilds. Lucy hoped that everything would soon be explained and that there was only one rogue mage in Phantom causing all of these issues. With a sigh, the blonde girl approached her apartment complex and entered. Lucy grinned broadly as she prepared to take a long, hot bath in her lovely bathroom. I'm finally home, she said. Upon entering her room, the girl was greeted by her friends grinning back at her, rather than the customary gloom. They said, Welcome home, to Naruto, Erza, Gray, Natsu, and Happy. Lucy's mouth fell open, and she hurled her pack at Natsu. What the hell? Erza took a sip of her tea and laughed. Sorry for inviting ourselves over, but seeing that Phantom Lord is targeting us for the moment, Mira recommended us to stay in groups at night just in case they try to ambush us. Lucy gave a sympathetic nod. She whimpered softly, I see. But why is it at my place? Happy lingered before Lucy. We will be switching places every night. Tomorrow we can all go to me and Natsu's place. With a sigh, Lucy took a seat at her coffee table beside her friends. Fine. With a sigh, Natsu returned to the table and took a seat. I hate how we aren't going to fight back at Phantom. The Dragon Slayer complained, wrapping his arms across his chest. We the hell is Ji-chan being too calm about all this? They attacked us. Erza let out a sigh. The red-haired beauty clarified, as Mira previously stated, the council forbids blatant attacks between guilds, so we can't just march over there to start a fight. Even we are to attack Phantom, it will not be with no losses. Power-wise, we are both about even. Gray arched an eyebrow. Really? The young man asked, considering Gildarts, Mistogen, Laxus, and Erza. Erza gave a nod. Yes. They also have their number of S-class mages, such as Element 4 and Black Steel Gajeel. The Iron Dragon Slayer. Lucy's eyes went wide with surprise. The girl turned to face her partner and exclaimed, You mean there are other Dragon Slayers beside Natsu? Erza gave a grim nod. The news shocked Lucy once more. That is not all. The Master of Phantom Lord is a member of the 10 Magic Saints, just like our Master. If 2 members of the 10 Wizard Saints are to clash, the result would be cataclysmic. Everyone in the group was silent, unsure of what to do in the event that Phantom's attacks persisted. Naruto ran from Erza to Lucy and patted her leg while giggling. After searching Lucy's house since his arrival, the boy finally located the game that Lucy and Levi had taught him to play a few days prior. Lucy, nay, can we play this game? He exclaimed. It was a game with memory cards. Lucy taught Naruto how to play the game because she wanted to test his memory, and he performed remarkably well. The boy could usually finish the game in a few minutes and had an excellent memory. Lucy was relieved that Naruto was present to defuse the situation. The girl chirped, Sure Naruto-chan, and gave the boy a head pat. Erza was grinning as she wiped the plates and glasses off the table. Naruto cheerfully handed the deck of cards to his favorite person while he sat quietly while she laid them out, saying, Okay. Hand me the cards, Naruto-chan. Since they had nothing better to do, Natsu, Gray, and Lucy sat around the table and watched the game. Lucy was grinning as she waited to find out if Naruto had improved since his last game session. After laying all the cards face up for a few seconds, Erza said, Okay. Take a good look, Naruto-chan. In the hopes of assisting the boy in the future, Natsu and Gray were also examining the cards below. Erza and Lucy both grinned as they flipped the cards to face down and turned Naruto away. Both Natsu and Gray felt that the boy had not had enough time to commit anything to memory. They only managed to commit a quarter of the cards to memory. Lucy turned Naruto back while giggling. Okay, go ahead, Naruto-chan. The boy jumped joyfully to the table, a smile on his face. Naruto flipped a quarter of the cards in a matter of seconds, effortlessly flipping one pair after another. As the boy continued to flip cards one after the others stared at him in disbelief. It appeared that he had committed every card's position to memory. To get to the cards on the other side of the table, Naruto had to get up higher, but he was able to flip them as well, and soon he was done. Naruto grinned as he turned back to Lucy. Done. Natsu's mouth fell open. Gray simply nodded in agreement. How the hell did you do that, Naruto? Says Gray. Erza's eyes widened as she turned to face Lucy. Did Naruto-chan do this last time? Lucy gave a startled shake of her head. No way. It took him several minutes last time, and he got some of the wrong last time. Gazing at the astonished expressions of those around him, Naruto smiled. Can we play again? With a startled expression on her face, Erza pulled the boy onto her lap and faced him. How did you do that, Naruto-chan? Did you really remember where everything was? Yep. The boy said, grinning. Lucy gave a small laugh and turned to face the boy. How did you remembered all that so fast, Naruto-chan? Naruto laughed. The boy waved his hands in the air and explained. I do something with my eyes and look down at the cards. Then I can remember everything. Natsu gave his head a scratch. Do what with you eyes? Naruto smiled. Naruto's sky blue eyes abruptly changed into something completely different, and everyone looked at him in disbelief. 2 strange tomos surrounded Naruto's pupil, turning his eyes crimson red. Unconsciously, Erza sensed that Naruto's energy had increased slightly since he had opened his eyes, and she thought that Naruto's new eyes had some kind of power. With his new eyes, Naruto would see strange colors of everyone's energy, and Erza was the gentle scarlet red that gave Naruto a sense of security. Naruto laughed as he looked up at the stunned crowd. With a hint of surprise, Gray gestured to the red eyes. What the hell is that? Natsu scratched his bewildered head. So it is some sort of eye magic? Erza gave a serious nod. Before turning to face Lucy, the S-class mage remarked, I think it is something like Evergreen's eyes. But these eyes give Naruto-chan eidetic memory. Lucy, have you or Levi ever seen Naruto-chan use these eyes before? Lucy gave a headshake. Never. I am just as surprised as all of you. Ahead of Naruto, Happy floated. These eyes are kind of weird. Erza held the boy's shoulders while glancing down at him once more. Naruto-chan, since when were you able to use those eyes? Naruto cocked his head sideways, reflecting. 2 days ago. With a sigh, Erza gathered Naruto in her embrace. This is too exhausting. Let's just all go to bed and deal with this tomorrow. Lucy nodded and let out a sigh of relief. Natsu, Happy, and Gray all shrugged and did as the women said, finding a spot to sleep in the tiny room. Good, I am too tired tonight to think about this, they said. The three of them went to the bed and laid down since Lucy had chosen to share it with Erza and Naruto. Although Naruto slept between Lucy and Erza, he did not feel very comfortable because both of their large breasts were pressed against his sides. Sunlight filtered into Naruto's closed eyes as morning broke over the placid town of Magnolia. The boy rubbed his eyes and wriggled in his sleep. Erza was in Naruto's arms when he woke up, as usual. Erza always gave Naruto a sense of security and warmth, and he enjoyed waking up that way. Everyone else was still asleep, and Naruto, who was still a little drowsy, yawned before he closed his eyes and snuggled back against Erza's chest. Naruto and everyone else in the room were abruptly awakened by a series of knocks on the door. Lucy sat up on the bed and rubbed her eyes, mumbling, Who is it? Lucy, it's me, Mirajane. The guild manager's well-known voice exclaimed. Something terrible has happened. Along with Naruto, Erza awoke groggily and glanced at the clock. The S-class mage sighed as she put on her standard Heart Cruise armor and approached the door, saying, It is still so early. Pulling the door open, Erza said, Coming Mira, good morning. When they saw the dejected expression on Mirajane's face, everyone became fully awake and hurried to confront the girl. What happened, Mira-chan? Gray inquired anxiously. Taking Erza by the hand, Mirajane dragged her out the door. Come with me. Something happened last night? Erza cried out, Mira, as her best friend dragged her away. Where are we going? Lucy picked up Naruto and ran behind them with Happy, while Natsu and Gray soon followed. After being woken up so suddenly, Lucy was still a little sleepy, but the sudden tension and the chilly morning wind helped her to relax. Still feeling drowsy, Naruto leaned his head against Lucy's shoulder and rubbed his eyes. The boy pushed himself up to look around, using Lucy's shoulder for support. The streets were largely deserted because it was still early in the morning, but there appeared to be a large group of people gathered in the town park. Pointing to the crowd, the boy said, Lucy Nay, what's going on? Lucy and the rest of her team stood in disbelief, staring up at the three individuals who were hanging by their hands from the top of the huge tree. With tears in her eyes, Lucy muttered, El Levi-chan. Natsu's fists were clenched in rage, and his eyes were blazing. Jet. Droy. When Gray noticed the symbol emblazoned on his friends' torsos, his eyes grew wide. The ice mage gritted his teeth and snarled, Phantom Lord. Erza was trying to control her anger, her gauntlet straining against her arm guards. Damn them. With a terrified expression, Naruto put his arms around Lucy's neck. Looking up at his benevolent teacher, the boy whimpered, Levi Nay. The girl with the blue hair had bruises the size of soccer balls and wounds all over her body. As Naruto leapt from Lucy's arms and approached the scene, tears welled up in his eyes. Erza swiftly grabbed Naruto's hand and prevented him from approaching. Stay here, Naruto-chan. They turned to see Makarov approaching the scene after a very strange and potent magical signature materialized behind the group. The master's eyes were fixed on his dead children, and his face was emotionless. Makarov's magical aura flared as he wore his 10 Magic Saints jacket, reminding everyone that he was the strongest mage in Fairy Tail. The old man clenched his fists and muttered, It is one thing to attack our empty guild. Natsu, Erza, and Gray turned to face the master in question and said, But to ambush 3 of my children, that draws the line. Naruto gave the elderly man a curious glance. Gigi? This means war. To exact revenge on the master for sending Levi, Jet, and Droy to the hospital, the group of fairy tale mages all followed him to the Phantom Lord Guild. The three young mages suffered multiple fractures throughout their bodies after being severely beaten. They were gradually recovering in a deep sleep after poor Ryuga restored them to their optimal condition. Erza had judged Naruto too young to accompany them, so Lucy had been assigned to watch over him in addition to her three friends. Erza and the master had both forbidden Naruto from entering combat at such a young age, despite Naruto's desire to follow Erza to battle Phantom. The boy wasn't pleased because he was also furious that his beloved teacher and surrogate sister had suffered such severe harm. Naruto wanted to use his guild to exact revenge on his sister and put forth his fair share of effort for his family, but he was sadly denied the opportunity to fight due to his youth. Lucy smiled and held the boy's hand as they walked, asking, "What do you want to eat tonight, Naruto-chan? I bought many things for us tonight, do you want some sushi?" After being excluded, Naruto was still a little sad, but he still smiled at Lucy. "Can we have ramen, Lucy-ne?" Lucy gave the boy a head pat while grinning. "Oh come on Naruto-chan, you just had ramen this afternoon." The boy pouted as he looked up at Lucy with his large blue eyes. Naruto skillfully whined, "But it's good. Please, Lucy-ne." The boy's cute expression instantly made the blonde beauty lose her will. "Fine. I swear, you are just as bad with ramen as happy as to fish." Naruto embraced Lucy's legs while giggling. "Thank you, Lucy-ne." When the two blondes noticed someone approaching them farther down the alleyway, they halted their journey back to Lucy's apartment. It wasn't raining, so it was already strange when a woman clutching a parasol was soon exposed. Rain started to pour heavily into their blonde hair, as if their thoughts had cursed the occasion. After keeping their sights fixed on the woman, Lucy and Naruto finally noticed that she had blue hair and a rather pale complexion. As she got closer to the two blondes, the strange woman whispered to herself, falling ever so gently, "Juvia is the rain woman." Lucy narrowed her eyes at the woman with the blue hair and pushed Naruto toward her. "Who are you?" The woman simply kept her eyes on the opposite side of the alley. As she passed Lucy and Naruto, she whispered, "What kind of woman are you? This was nice. Farewell." Naruto raised his gaze to Lucy. "What was that?" Lucy gave a nearly sheepish laugh. "I have no idea." An obnoxious voice from somewhere beneath the earth sounded, "Non, non, 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 non," as the peacefully constructed road on the ground started to change. A phallus began to rise from the earth, and then it moved once more to show a very thin man in a monocle and a brown suit. The man slid back to stand next to the woman with the blue hair and said, "You shouldn't walk away from your job, Juvia-sama. I believe this young woman here is our Cybele." Lucy stopped back with Naruto, her eyes widening. "Cybele? Target?" The man placed a hand on his monocle and cocked his body to the side. "Sorry for the belated introductions, but I am Saul of Element 4, you can call me, Monsieur Saul." Lucy tightened her grip on Naruto's hand while gritting her teeth. "Element 4, Phantom." Saul grinned. "Key, we both have come to invite you back to our headquarters to meet with our master." Lucy pushed Naruto behind her and took a step back. Levi-chan and the others were harmed by these individuals. Lucy glared at the two adversaries while reaching for her keys. Naruto was shocked to see Lucy suddenly imprisoned in a floating ball of water. "How dare you?" he exclaimed. "What is this?" Lucy suffocated. "Let me out." Juvia held out her hand to control the water, but she showed no emotion. Lucy's eyes widened at the implication. "Juvia's waterlock is unbreakable, but don't worry, Juvia will not kill you, Lucy Heartfilia-sama. After all, you are the main target of our mission. Your father, Jude Heartfilia-sama, really wants his daughter back home." Lucy was on the verge of losing consciousness when she was abruptly pulled backwards by two small arms. Naruto pleaded, "Let go of Lucy-ne," as he clung to Lucy's waist in the water. HHAAA. Naruto gathered his strength and gave the order to make his clones. Numerous Naruto clones were placed inside the water orb in less than a second, and it soon collapsed under the increasing pressure and weight. When Juvia saw her magic fail, her eyes grew wide. "What?" His monocle was held up to Soul's eye. "Non, non." As he pulled, Naruto grasped Lucy's panting hand. "Come on Lucy-ne, we have to run." Lucy pushed herself up and allowed them to carry her out of the small alley. While running next to his surrogate sister, Naruto turned on his red eyes and turned to face the enemies who were pursuing him. Both Juvia and Saul were concealed in their elements, the latter moving underground and the former moving as a puddle of water in motion. However, Naruto's unique eyes might be able to pinpoint their exact locations. The boy stopped dead in his tracks after pushing Lucy forward. The boy exclaimed, "You go, Lucy nay," as she re-equipped his katana. Lucy immediately stopped and turned around, her eyes widening. "No way, Naruto-chan, you are coming with me." When Naruto's eyes noticed that Saul was directly beneath him, he leapt into the air and scowled at the ground. Naturally, the boy slashed his blade down and exclaimed, "Kazekiri no Jutsu." Then, a blade of wind, invisible and crescent, cut through the air and struck the ground. The strong wind blade immediately ripped the roadblocks apart, and Saul could hardly avoid the blow himself. There was a big scar in the center of the cement road that was at least 30 feet long. As he descended from his leap, Naruto's gaze stayed fixed on Saul. The boy screamed, "Take this," and kicked the man square in the face. The man cried out in agony, "Non," as he was hurled headfirst deeper into the earth. Lucy's face was a big smile. "Wow, go Naruto-chan." Juvia regained consciousness after forcing herself to emerge from her stunned stupor. "Water nebula," the woman cried, blasting a disgusting stream of water out of her hand. Naruto discovered that he could anticipate his opponent's movements thanks to his eyes, and he was able to avoid the water attack with ease. As he hurled a blade of wind at Juvia, the boy exclaimed, "Kazekiri." Once more. However, the woman just allowed the blade to cut through her body, which was completely unharmed because she was composed of water. As he continued to shoot swift wind blades, Naruto's eyes grew wide, but Juvia was unaffected by them either. 20 Naruto clones emerged with multiple puffs of smoke, 15 of which had rushed to Lucy. As the group of children lifted Lucy over their arms and began to flee, they exclaimed, "Let's go, Lucy nay." Lucy was afraid for her surrogate younger brother, not for herself. The girl exclaimed, "Run with me, Naruto-chan." Loudly, "It's dangerous." Naruto was immediately alert as Juvia raised her hands. "I do not want to hurt you, little boy." Naruto used his 5 surviving clones to glare at the woman. "I won't let you take Lucy nay." The 6 Narutos began to lash out at the woman with wind slashes one after the other. Due to a lack of support, the building behind the fight was nearly completely destroyed, causing extensive damage behind the woman. People who could hear were beginning to flee the scene as loud noises of wind crashing against walls and the ground reverberated throughout the space. Naruto's own red eyes met Juvia's emotionless gaze. "Out of my way." Naruto and his clones were struck by a powerful wave of water that was triggered by a hand wave. The powerful attack destroyed the clones and threw the original Naruto 20 feet back onto the street. As he got to his feet, Naruto clenched his teeth because he felt as though he was recalling a memory from a past dream. Juvia was about to follow Lucy as she passed Naruto when the boy leapt in front of her once more. "Juvia, do not want to hurt you. But if you keep blocking my way, I will have no choice." Naruto concentrated his power and raced in her direction. The boy made a strange gesture with his hands and inhaled. "You are made out of water, so I can't cut you. But I can push you," he said. "Futon. Daitopa." Naruto's mouth spit out a powerful gust of wind. The wind pushed back Juvia's body of water like a solid wall. Juvia grunted, "You," as she was pushed back against a wall, the force of the blow flattening her body slightly. Naruto created 10 more clones in a flash. Each clone exclaimed, "Daitopa," as they began to blast Juvia with powerful gusts of wind. As the Element 4's water body was pushed harder and harder against the flat wall, it began to decompose and return to liquid form. Juvia was not harmed by the attacks, but they did confine her. Juvia didn't have enough time to recover and flee due to Naruto's lightning-fast attacks. The original Naruto left his clones to carry on attacking until their power ran out and started to retreat to meet Lucy. The assault on Phantom Lord was a complete failure. In addition to Fairy Tail's inability to eliminate Gajeel, Makarov was ambushed and in terrible shape. The loss of the Master forced Erza to retreat. Without their leader, the fight would only end in Phantom's favor. To rest and recover, the Fairy Tail mages hurried back to their own guild. The Master was still in critical condition, but there weren't many injured members. Happy looked up at Lucy and said, "Why did you tell us that you were the heiress to the Heartfilia family?" Lucy was crestfallen as she sat on a crate. "I didn't mean to hide it, but I ran away from home. It is not something that is easy for me to tell." The child softly murmured. "But why would he do this? All this effort just to get me back. I've been away for a year already and he never seemed to care." Natsu knelt down to meet Lucy's eyes and put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The Dragon Slayer grinned and said, I don't care why, if you don't want to go back then we will all help you. You are Fairy Tail's Lucy, and we protect our comrades. Many of Lucy's friends, including Natsu, Happy, Naruto, Elfman, Gray, and Kana, were grinning when she looked up. Thank you. Naruto embraced Lucy's arm while giggling. We will protect you, Lucy Nay. Lucy put her arms around the boy's chest and grinned. Lucy had told the others about Naruto's actions, and they were all amazed and proud of him. You already protected me, Naruto-chan. Lucy said. If you weren't there, I would have already been taken. Natsu gave Naruto a head pat while grinning. Good job, Naruto. Elfman nodded, grinning. It is hard to believe that such a young kid could already be so strong, to be able to hold back two of the Element 4 and help Lucy escape. Gray grinned and nodded. Yeah, this kid is going to be more powerful than all of us. Everyone stopped talking when they heard glass breaking, and when they turned to face the source of the sound, they saw Mirajane clutching her fists while tears streamed down her cheeks. Laxus refused to return to support the guild until Lucy became his woman, despite Mirajane's best efforts to persuade him to do so. When the takeover mage could take it no more, she destroyed the video lacrima. Kana made contact with her friend. Mirajane wiped her tears and sniffed. The bartender shook and exclaimed, how can there be someone like that in our guild? Next time. I am coming with you all. Kana shook her head and took her friend's hand. No, you won't be able to help the way you are now, even though you used to be an S-class mage. The guild appeared to be shrouded in silence, but then the ground trembled violently. Then again a few seconds later. Shakes seemed to be occurring more frequently and in greater quantities. The mages never anticipated what they saw, but they all rushed outside and braced themselves for an impending attack. A traveling guild hall was what it was. In reality, the massive 100-foot structure was traversing the ocean on 6 mechanical legs. Fairy Tail was heavily shadowed by its imposing structure, and Magnolia was rocked by the sound of its footsteps. None of the members anticipated that Phantom would launch such an attack, and they all watched in disbelief as the enemy approached. The tall building gazed down at them, and even Erza, still wrapped in a towel, watched in horror. The red-haired beauty muttered, I never expected this. A massive steel cannon was suddenly visible emerging from the Phantom Guildhall as a large wall began to slide down. As a black energy gathered around the cannon's head and twisted into a ball of unfathomable power, everyone watched in awe. Erza swiftly turned back to her allies, her eyes widening. Erza's eyes darted around the crowd as she yelled, take cover, now. Her gaze lingered on Naruto's presence for a considerable amount of time. The boy was staring at her with intense concern and fear in his eyes. Erza acknowledged without saying a word that Naruto was indeed more concerned about her than he was about himself. The black energy ball grew until it was roughly half as big as Phantom's Guildhall. Erza re-equipped into her strongest defensive armor, the adamantine armor, and bounded forward. I said, take cover. Mirajane put her hands to her lips and gasped. She isn't planning to take it head-on, is she? As he attempted to run forward, Natsu let out a cry. Erza! The Dragon Slayer persisted despite Gray's efforts to restrain his friend by his arms. When he activated his red eyes, Naruto's eyes widened, and Mirajane had her arms wrapped around him in case he attempted to run up. Chan? Naruto was rendered soundless by the sound of the cannon being fired. As the explosion drew nearer to Erza, his gaze remained fixed on her, slowing down the action. When Erza's shield struck the blast, Naruto felt his body go numb. From his vantage point, he could see Erza's tense expression and the fissures that started to appear on her shield. Erza's shield was blasted into pieces and she was sent hurtling back to the ground after what felt like an eternity for Naruto. Some were shocked and in awe of Erza's ability to stop the Jupiter cannon on her own, but Naruto's mind failed to recognize the cannon. Naruto's legs began to move on their own, as if under control, and he was forced to run as quickly as he could in Erza's direction. Naruto only cared about getting to Erza's side as the cries of Lucy and Mirajane faded from his ears. He ran faster than ever before out of desperation, and he was with her in less than a second. A wide-eyed Naruto knelt beside Erza's unconscious body and whispered, Chan? Naruto's whole being was overcome by fear and desperation as a growing horror seeped up from his heart. As Naruto's power surged dangerously powerful, the ground around him started to tremble. Gazing down at Erza's closed eyes, Naruto's red eyes each gained one more tomo. Naruto's body abruptly started to glow a brilliant white, and everyone in Fairy Tail watched in disbelief. In front of everyone, the boy's body started to change as his power increased in tandem with his rapid growth. Under the strain of his changing body, Naruto's clothing started to tear, and his t-shirt dropped to the floor. Even though they were now shorts, his long pants held up well against the developing muscles in his legs. Additionally, Naruto's basic pair of runners tore, leaving him barefoot on the ground. Everyone watched in disbelief as a teenage Naruto emerged as the light went out. His muscles gave the impression that he was much older than 13. With his hair growing slightly longer than before and his twin bangs now reaching the bottom of his cheeks, the boy already had a body rippling with compressed muscles. As his power rolled off his body in powerful waves, his Tritomo red eyes were fixed on the Phantom Guild Hall. There was a puff of smoke coming from the tattoo on his arm, and it began to glow. As Naruto stood up, he finally turned his attention away from Erza's body and a tri-pronged kunai materialized in his right hand. Naruto held his kunai tightly in his hand and gazed up at the Phantom Guild with a savage glare in his eyes. Phantom Lord.